course, we now have a speaker that I think everyone here is quite familiar with, and much of the listening audience knows her, and many know her very well. Her name is Laura Eisenhower, and she will be giving us, I'm sure, an awesome presentation today. And without further ado, Laura.
Hi everybody. It's been quite an adventure getting here. And I like adventures, even if it means sleeping on weird areas of the airport. I wasn't going to miss this. And I almost did. And just something told me, no, you're not going to miss this. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you for coming. So talking about Mars, we all have our different pieces of this greater story and agenda. For me, I went through sort of a human interaction recruitment that was through somebody. And I'll tell you a little bit about the story if you haven't heard it already, but just a little bit of an intro. Oh, do we have me on the screen here? So I have a few kind of titles I give myself. I like to joke that this is not anything your guidance counselor in high school will help guide you into. It's just something you wake up to and realize you're doing. So the global alchemy part is we're wanting to turn the lead of this human experience into gold. We've been in this sort of heavy density for thousands of years with this incredible potential on a DNA level. And so when we look at hidden agendas, we have to figure they're trying to compromise us on some level. And when we look at the planetary body Mars, I like, as an astrologer, understand the properties of it to know what we're kind of dealing with. And it's a solar plexus energy. It relates to ego, and there's the negative ego, and then there's the ego that's in alignment with spirit. And for that alignment to happen, there needs to be that balance of the masculine and feminine. And so my recruitment is also connected to the Venus transits in my path related to Gaia Sophia. And I think they just wanted to pull me off planet to keep me from talking about certain things. So as much as I turned it down on a human level, I do feel that they're taking me at times to Mars anyway. So no matter how much you say no, they're like, she's asleep in the astral, let's mess with her. So yeah, global alchemist, cosmic mythologist, I mean, we're all living these myths. I mean, we have to, complete these scripts and write stories that relate to a future that we want to manifest. And so the more we bring out what's been secret, the more empowered we are, the more we can utilize all our creative power. So international speaker, I've been able to travel speaking about this stuff. Whistleblower, intuitive astrologist. If anybody wants a reading, you can find information out on my website, lauraeisenhower.com. I do tarot, clairvoyant readings, and astrology. And basically, since I was a kid, I've been prepared for this window period we're in, which is basically, I would say the window is between 2000 and 2025. Some people say it's 2009 to 2017. I think it's a lot wider. I would actually say it ends. It doesn't end, but the opportunity to really awaken is that potential's there until 2025, and a lot of it has to do with the 13th gate and the 13th sign of Fiacus. So when we look at the Mars agenda, the hidden Mars agenda, and we see all this activity from Venus and the divine feminine, it's really to integrate into that Mars energy and not create an enemy, but to expose it so that we can enlighten that negative ego octave of the Mars and bring it to a higher vibration. Because we're multidimensional and there's different octaves to the planetary bodies. So I help guide people in this ascension period. It's not like I'm a poster child having it all figured out. I've got a lot of my own work I'm working through, but we're kind of holding hands in this and needing to be transparent and honest about our processes. Multidimensional traveler and teacher of polarity and monadic integration. I work a lot with these Christ-Sophia energies, and so when we look at polarity and monadic integration, we're looking at galactic chakras and how we can bring the energy of the galactic chakras into our 7 chakra system, because we've been sort of locked in this time loop where we're only circulating in the 7 chakras. There's a lot of psychic attack when one begins to go beyond that, so I try and help people to understand how to do that, understand the psychic attacks that can come along with advancing ourselves on a DNA level. Okay, so organic timeline is what they want to keep us from, and it relates to an inner shift and reawakening of our divine template and DNA potential. Artificial timelines relates to government and ET treaties, and also technologies that were put in place 26,000 years ago. It doesn't mean that all agreements and treaties are negative, but the thing is we want to be sovereign beings, and so when we're dealing with agendas, even if they're sort of looking out for us as a human race, there's still an element of control. And so the awakening process has to do with how to take our power back and be co-creative instead of be sort of caught in the middle of all these larger plans for us. And when we're caught in the middle, I mean, there's a lot of facades and a lot of things that manipulate for us, because we're kind of like the prize. I mean, we have very advanced DNA. We have a lot of power with our Kundalini, and some of these groups compromise their DNA on purpose in order to maintain control. And so they're afraid of us, waking up and advancing to what our potential is, because as the time matrix almost got destroyed, there was a new reseeding of humans that connected our DNA with the Trinity. So we have the capacity to be 12-strand and beyond, to 64, and also our DNA connects with the 13th gate and dimensions 13, 14, and 15, which is not physical. It's the essence of the Trinity, which could be mother, father, child. But when we look at child, it's not just son. You know how people are like Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It's also daughter, the Christ Sophia energy. It's masculine and feminine. So the technologies that were put in place, one particular is called the Nephilim reversal grid, and that creates reversals and distortions of platonic solids like the dodecahedron, which connects to the ether. And so the challenge for humanity has been, this alchemy of connecting with the ether instead of being sort of ruled by physicality to the point of being in survival or emotional anguish or a feeling of disempowerment because of these false power structures. And so we've got the false power structures, but behind the false power structures, we've got these secret space programs and this Mars agenda. And I know we all have different pieces of the story. I'm still trying to figure it out, but what I share is as close to what I feel is, the truth as I can possibly get. So, why these technologies? Well, I mean, it's to create disunity and to enslave souls. But you can only really be enslaved if you buy into the programming. So when we look at things like chemtrails and all the assaults, we have to figure that you have to buy into the bait. You have to, kind of like a mouse, eat the cheese for the trap to smack on your head. And if you're not buying into the programmings, we have the opportunity to continue to advance and upgrade our DNA, and then we are functioning from a higher dimensional level, which means that we can transmute and neutralize, a lot of these, attacks. And so, I just really honor Lindsay and James and Lewis and Thomas and everybody who, has a piece of this, greater story. This is not easy stuff to break free from, I mean, the amount of memory wiping and, just, serving for a certain amount of time and being, regressed. And I mean, the amount of people that don't even know what they've done for years, is really intense. So it takes a lot to, be willing to really, awaken those memories and see things for what they are. And then speaking about it is a whole other thing. I mean, this conference has definitely been under attack. So, and I'm the kind of person, like, if you're going to try and attack me, I'm going to come back that much stronger. So I always like to joke, like, you're creating a monster here. Like, the more you try and stop me, the more, the more I'm going to push it and not let it crush me. I look at it like being in a spiritual gym, try and put they try and crush you with the weight, but they keep pushing back, and then all of a sudden you're like super strong. So I consider that we're the disclosure. We don't want to count on our governments. It's a relief that Hillary's not in office, but Trump is a freaking freak. So I'm just glad I don't have a TV. I mean, it's almost comedy. It's like you almost have to like be an observer. It's like I see us all like, it's like we're not really on this timeline, but we're observing it, and it's like ridiculous in so many ways. So it's like great that Hillary's not in office, but whoever this clown is, we got a lot of work to do. And he needs our help if he has an open mind at all to this sort of stuff. Obviously, he's going to be briefed on some level, or he's going to be dealing with something behind the scenes that could really compromise what he's trying to do. Problem is, he's sort of a moronic pig, and if he could just have like more social skills, you know, maybe, you know, he would inspire people. But I mean, he really made Hillary look good to a lot of people, and a lot of people are super bummed. But the thing is, he's not entrenched in the Illuminati in the same way as Hillary. So I'm just glad he won, but I can't stand. I've never voted, and people are like, aren't you an Eisenhower? You don't vote. And I couldn't even pass the citizenship test. I don't have a brain for government. I don't understand the structure of it. I don't even understand what the electoral, I don't, it's not a language I speak. So anyway, I feel like I've already cast my vote. I vote for us. I vote for unity consciousness. I vote for disclosure amongst us. It's our stories, it's our information, it's our revelations, it's our ability to connect the dots and look deeper than, you know, what could be presented as a sort of governmental disclosure that might be done slowly that is going to steer us into an artificial timeline, which is already pretty well established, and transhumanism. And as many know, transhumanism destroys all biological life, even if it promises some sort of utopia or advanced culture that's technologically based. I mean, as we saw in Atlantis, anything that's too polarized, whether it's masculine and feminine, whether it's spirituality and science, technology versus you know, this greater development, anything that's off balance, you know, we're easily controlled and compromised. So that center point of balance is really important. It actually connects us with the 0 point. Everything about our DNA upgrade is basically like a love story. When we go into the higher strands of DNA, we're actually moving into this polarity integration, monadic integration, and then hierogamic union. And in advanced ancient cultures, those rituals or ceremonies of uniting the masculine and feminine were very important to the land, to the grids, the earth grids. And so those grids have been compromised and unplugged. So when we look at how low our DNA activation, or our level of DNA, the strands that we function on is completely small. So, okay, we can look at the metaphor of the tree of knowledge. Well, the tree of knowledge, which is the process of discovering gnosis, which is self-awareness, has been targeted with mind control. And that mind control has confused our ability to really obtain true knowledge, and has externalized it, you know, with governments and religions and things to keep us, you know, dumbed down. So it's not just the manipulation from extraterrestrials, it's the manipulation of earth grids and those platonic solids, so that we're immediately born into something where we can't function at our fullest level. But because we fell in density, it's also an opportunity for us to learn the right use of power. That's the whole point of reincarnating and learning about ourselves and ego. But anyway, we are the disclosure. It's important that it comes through us and that we keep our eye on them and what they choose to share, because a lot of individuals, of course, are looking for solutions, you know, to all the global problems, the degradation of the environment, the contamination of the waters, the spraying of the sky. But the thing is, you know, I feel part of the plan is that when they're ready for disclosure, they're also going to be ready to pull us into where some of these beings are our masters, and we're, you know, relying on them, almost like the war on terror, you know, a false facade that we feel a dependency towards because we feel like it's creating a solution, but they're the ones who created the problem on purpose. So the Cabal have created the control system that we are in now to ensure that we stay limited to a 3D existence, and also so that healing doesn't take place for the negative ET groups who want to maintain power. Those are the monarchies and the Illuminati. It is to interfere with true spiritual marriage, which is what we need to get in touch with. And they know this balance and unity is all it really takes for us to ascend. And the thing is, ascension isn't like, let's float out of here or we're going beyond here. It actually is a very grounded process. It connects to the core of this planet that's seeded with the 13-dimensional core. When we sank in density, the mother energy, the mother creator energy from the Trinity itself, a portion of her body morphed into the physical planet. The Gnostics talk about this. So when you look at a Mars agenda and you look at a secret Mars agenda, it's almost like this negative ego in the background that wants to maintain power wants to serve the elitist, wants to enslave others in order to serve just a few. But, you know, we're dealing with off-planet entities that have, you know, a link to these control groups and these individuals that they're not necessarily going to help at the end of the day. Maybe, you know, to them, a lot of them are disposable. And so as much as they think that they're going to get something from the position they're in, that's not necessarily going to be the case. So when we look at the spiritual marriage, it's not so much about that external partnership, it's about that internal. And when we heal the internal, when we recognize the masculine and feminine as a dance instead of a power struggle, we move out of the patriarchy and we actually play a part in dismantling these technologies, because you can't exactly like dig for them and dismantle them. It has to be something that we raise our frequency above. And then that energy that we emit into the environment changes the nature of how these technologies operate, which are all about reversal so that we digress. They want us to digress because we're basically their food source. Okay. So when the cradle of Lyra was destroyed in the Lyran Wars with Orion groups, this is when the destruction of the avatar level of consciousness took place. So the Galactic Wars really did begin in Lyra, and then they moved to, you know, Orion. So I know a lot of people know about the Orion Wars. I'm not exactly an expert in it, but I know enough to know that, you know, in this free will universe, the whole concept of power has been played with, and things were happening on Mars and Maldek. And, you know, we're dealing with exploded planets, Tiamat and Maldek. We got Tiamat in 5D Earth, which is in the Taurus system, and we got Maldek more in the 3D Earth after we sank in density and more planets came into the picture. So when we look at the asteroid belt, that's basically these exploded planets. And what's interesting is the archetypes of these asteroids are names of the goddess. Vesta, Juno, Chiron. Chiron, the wounded healer, is a really huge one right now. So we don't need to get into all the archetypes. But the reason Chiron is so important is because we're carrying a collective wound, a huge wound as a humanity. And so when we look at Chiron, we're looking at childhood wounds, we're looking at past life wounds, we're looking at everything that we're sensitive to. You know, like any of us who just observe things going on a global scale, if we have a sensitivity to certain movements or certain, you know, things that need repair or need attention, you know, we're working with Chiron. And Chiron connects with the 13th gate and the 13th sign. So the most important thing is that we can recognize our wounds, because the thing is, we're dealing with a hidden Mars agenda, but we have to work the energy. So if we're willing to look at our wounds, we're able to heal the negative ego. When we're able to heal the negative ego, we're able to heal the elements on the planet. So that purification process actually heals the waters, heals the skies, clears the skies, neutralizes these technologies, and helps, you know, helps to regenerate the environment. The thing is, Gaia knows how to do it on her own. She's multidimensional, but she's giving us a chance to see where we're going wrong so that we can align our souls with, you know, how to advance, how to learn the lessons so that we can get this avatar consciousness back and switch on our DNA. So something like a hidden Mars agenda is trying to compromise that, because when I was recruited, I could tell that the agenda was maybe well-intentioned at a certain point in time, you know, where it was about protecting the human genome or DNA in the event of a cataclysm. And when I was recruited, I didn't have, you know, whistleblowers to refer to. I didn't have, you know, any Project Camelot or any knowledge of who Wilcock is or I mean, anybody. I didn't, or Andy or Alfred, Andrew Bishago. So I started navigating this on my own, but I was like, okay, they're saying this is for my protection. They want to take me off planet. I'm like, first of all, that's probably bullshit. They want to protect me. But you know, this was something that was developed during the Eisenhower administration, and it seemed, you know, Eisenhower set up the Jason Scholars, and there was already MJ12, and it seemed that whatever communications they were getting, this was for the protection of humanity. But the thing is, these things are infiltrated. The thing is, there's compartmentalism. So-and-so will hear something, and somebody else, other group will hear something else, and they're not able to see what's really going on in the full picture. They're being convinced that they're, I mean, a lot of well-intentioned people are being convinced that they're, you know, serving the greater good. The partner that they used to bring me into the Mars project felt like a hero. He felt like he was helping the human race. And I was sort of seeing through this. I was noticing his behavior. He was getting phone calls and disappearing for days and not remembering stuff. And I didn't really know, what to make of it. He was, saying he had handlers. He said I could have a handler. And then I was just thinking, okay, he's operating from something else. He keeps changing and altering. So I didn't know what to do. So I was Googling around and I was like learning about this and educating myself about it all. But I got rare earth magnets. I'm trying to put them on certain places of his body. He's like not really digging it. And he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, don't you realize what they're doing to you? Like, I'm like, this whole Mars thing doesn't feel good. And I have a mission to be on Earth and I'm not supposed to go to Mars, blah, blah, blah. Again, they're probably taking me there anyway, but hopefully I'm fully conscious to a certain degree. So a lot of well-intentioned people get caught up in these agendas because they were, I believe, they used to be, it used to be a pretty darn good idea, but when you're dealing with things like HAARP and chemtrails and nanoparticles and things that can influence weather, are these cataclysms even going to be natural? So why would we evacuate the Earth? Okay, well, it's good to have a backup plan in case something does happen, but when you have the ability to create superstorms, artificial timelines, and Armageddon scenarios, is that engineered or is that natural? So I'm sensing that's not natural. Mother Earth doesn't need to evacuate us. She might have her way of thinning out the population and bringing balance, but I felt this infiltration and I felt sort of this kind of Nazi energy, like something just wasn't right. So the destruction of advanced civilizations and sacred union caused Tara, where Tiamat existed, dimensions 4, 5, and 6, to fall into dimensions 1, 2, and 3. And everything drastically changed. More planets came into the picture, and both Tara and Tiamat exploded. Well, Tara kind of like fell. When we look at Tiamat too, it's like that relates to aspects of the moon and the artificial moon, and also like a portion of her body being a part of this earth. But it's the fragmented consciousness of the goddess, and that's why so many of us, are on these paths of calling back aspects or reintegrating aspects and dealing with a certain level of fragmented consciousness. I mean, the whole of humanity is attacked and traumatized. There's more concentrated areas and versions of all this, when you're dealing with different projects, of course, and what goes on in the Illuminati families. But, look at the number 13, 13 families. They sort of hijack that number 13. And what I've noticed is, okay, there hasn't been a 13th floor, right? And most hotels. And I've been to a lot of conferences where it's like, okay, yeah, no 13th floor. And now I've noticed that there's a 13th floor. I'm like, did we do something here?
I live on the 13th floor.
Nice.
Yes.
It's a very powerful number. Yeah. It also, is the number of death and the emperor. So, but it also is the number connected to the goddess. So when you think about it, the feminine energy is with the masculine. It's not about one or the other. It's about that unity.
13 crystal skulls.
Right. Yep, and the 13th Council of Grandmothers. And, yeah, 13 could, lots of good stuff connected with that. But it's been, that kind of taboo number. How can a number be taboo? How can you just take out a number? Like, first of all, a number shouldn't even have that much power, but, it does. But it more relates to the 13th gate and the fact that the sun has moved into the sign of Ophiuchus since 2010. And so that creates sort of this completion. And when we look at the zodiac, when we look at the 12 signs, when we look at the 12 stargates and the 13th gate, it relates to our DNA. So we're an exact replica of what the Earth and multidimensional creation is. We have, 15 chakras. There's more than that, kind of offshoots. And then we have that 12-strand potential, but ethereally that 12 goes beyond. So, yeah, it's like, whoops, we exploded a planet. Ooh, that's, a difficult thing, because we're a part of that planetary consciousness. We all hold that trauma from, our history. We have trauma from, Atlantean cataclysms and Lemurian Holocaust, but those were the root races. The Tiamat energy in Tara was the original Atlantis and Lemuria. It's kind of like the right and left brain of the masculine and feminine, and it became more and more polarized. Because when you're dealing with free will, you're going to deal with sort of this experiment with negative ego, and some call it the Lucifer rebellion. I'm not here to pick on entities and say, oh, it's all about Lucifer doing this or doing that. It's really just about the repairing of our soul architecture, recognizing that we hold all those archetypes. And if we want to redeem that Lucifer energy, we have to come into balance and complete that cycle of Venus, because Lucifer is connected to Venus and so is Christ Sophia. So we go and we complete that cycle. And the sacred geometry of Venus forms a perfect pentagram, which offsets the inversion of the pentagram that the Illuminati have sort of held as their, symbol, which is not terrible, but it just means that physicality holds dominion and that they're sort of the controllers of how that physicality is going to impact us. So we separated from the 7 higher heavens, which connects to the Andromeda galaxy. So in this ascension window period, we're realigning with Andromeda, which actually connects to a particular stargate and energy ley line on the planet. And so when we move into these different initiations, we're actually healing things on a much larger level than we could possibly realize. And I like to break it down into a love story. It gets too complex. If we're going to upgrade DNA, how can we do that? It's kind of like, well, what do we do? How do we do it? Well, it's a love story. It means you divorce the imposter. You divorce the betrayer, the deceiver, which is what we see in our government and political systems, all the lies, all the facades, and we just have to simply break those agreements and have a more authentic connection to creation and the elements, and then those upgrades naturally happen because on a cosmic level we're being given that opportunity. So we separated from the 7 higher heavens and have been locked into the 7 chakra system in patriarchy, blocked from accessing the bridge to the rest of ourselves and unity consciousness. Our 7 chakras have been implanted and spiritual knowledge has been distorted. So, it's almost like there's a massive gatekeeper that keeps us from being able to go beyond. And very often, our 7th chakra gets plugged into a guru or a priest or a belief system that isn't really empowering, allowing us to really understand that divine template that exists within us. And so the Mars recruiters, at least one that defected, is that the right word, or deflected? Defected? Defected. Mm-hmm. Was helping me to understand, why they would have, chosen me. And he said pretty much everything on your website they're aware of about you, and they don't like they want to kind of use you. And I think it also has to do with the Eisenhower bloodline, because during his administration, a lot of this stuff was set up. And so I was pre-targeted before birth, and my whole childhood I was sort of being prepared for this window period that had everything to do with staying on Gaia. But I could feel these weaponry, I could feel these attacks, I could feel something beamed on me, but I didn't know the languaging, I didn't know what to say to people, and it's like, okay, I had to determine that I was going to live a double life. It's like, this isn't going to make sense to anybody. I can't make it go away. I know it's the truth, but then every time I didn't think it was the truth and I thought I was delusional, everything would spiral out of control. I would, I would have physical issues, and it's like my body was saying, no. If you start to divert or not trust this and what you're sensing, our physical body sounds the alarm, likes to keep us in balance and keep us in check. So for me to be healthy, for me to be alive, because it was life or death, I had to own this stuff as truth. So I was like, okay, well, there's some sort of, I couldn't create anything. There was something like trying to steer me into a direction that I didn't really want to go. No matter what I tried to manifest, nothing ended up working out, and I'm like, I thought, okay, I just have crappy karma, or, maybe there's something wrong with my creative powers, but, we're all powerful, so something, is definitely getting in the way. So I went to this clairvoyant institute by accident. I was going to go to this herbal school, but they didn't have enough participants, and they kind of pulled me in this group, this clairvoyant group, for a meditation, and they said, you have all this attention on you and all this weaponry stuff, and affecting your nervous system and keeping you out of your body. I'm like, oh my God, somebody's seeing this. So like, I'll take a couple classes here, and they definitely noticed this level of targeting, and eventually I gave up, and I just said, okay, whatever these forces are, take me to them, because I can't fight against this anymore. It's too exhausting, and there's something that's trying to take me someplace else. So I was like, screw it. Wherever I'm supposed to go, as far as they're concerned, I need to meet with them and put an end to this. And so it led me to the Mars recruiters that had been trying to yank me into their thing. And I could feel that, and I tried, to avoid it. the first group that I met was not the Mars people. It was somebody that put a spell on me when I was 7 years old, and we figured out, because there was some sort of interview that he had with somebody who was using the Philosopher's Stone to keep herself alive with 7 ingredients, not your typical Philosopher's Stone that you see in a lab. And anyway, he had done some spell, and I said, oh, you know, what year was that? Because around 7 years old, I felt a really strange energy on me. And we met in a very unusual way. I had put something out there, and he said, I'm looking for you, and he goes, I have something for you. And then I went to his apartment, and he pulls out, you know, he goes through all these books and all these things, and he's looking for it, and it's this interview, and it's about stuff that happened with Adam and Eve, and the seeding of the human race, and the 3 mothers, Lilith, Diana, and Sophia, and just the story about, you know, these 3 mothers, and he goes, this belongs to you. And so he gave it to me, and it's never been published, it's never been put out there. He was a recluse and never put it out there, but, so I was like, cool, I'm free, like whatever that was, breaking that spell. I was like, no. The next thing was, I went to a festival and met somebody that they sent on a mission to pull me into the Mars thing. I just thought I met somebody who was going to Mars, and I was like, well, that's exciting, you know. I thought it was going to be like more public, like it was. He goes, no, you can't tell anybody. This is all hush, hush, hush. I'm like, okay. Well, they're planning a trip, so we don't want to tell anybody until the trip is. I mean, I didn't have any idea about secret space programs, and I'm like, okay. So what happened is, through Looking Glass Technologies, they were able to locate us in a past life, so that when I met him, I would have a natural attraction. Because you can't just set somebody up with an agent and expect you to fall in love, right? It's just like, I'm not that easy. So I meet this person, and I know him, completely familiar, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, and we're just clicking. I actually got a LinkedIn invitation from him earlier today, the person. I didn't even know if he was still around. And it's like, Richard Dell, I might as well say his name, hey Richard, sent me an invitation which is weird because I pretty much figured he hates me at this point. So anyway, I just figured I had met somebody, and maybe I could talk to the people or the group that he's associated with, you know, to maybe take care of Mother Earth and then go off planet, you know, and just to kind of like be a part of this greater conversation. But there was none of that. So, and I didn't even know he was sent on a mission. I just went to this festival and ran into somebody familiar. We're playing drums and blah, blah, blah. Everything's fun. We hang out all night, like supposedly kind of fall in love. And so I'm living in DC in my mom's basement because when I couldn't create anymore and I gave up, where did I end up? The basement of my mother's house. But then there was more to it than just like, okay, you're at the basement of your mother's house. So this character was going to secret meetings, and so we were seeing each other, but he was going to these secret meetings. And I was like, okay, what's this about? He goes, well, we're going to Mars in 2012. That's the target date. And I'm like, cool, okay, well, it could have been just any, you know, person that he could date that he was going to take to Mars. I just thought, this is just what my man does, okay, but I don't really want to go, so let's kind of figure this out. And so I kept trying to convince him, you know, there's got to be like another way, we got to take care of Mother Earth, and like, yeah, you know, nobody wanted to hear me. Everything was just like, you know, just shut up, Laura, you're going to Mars, and if you don't, we're going to take you anyway. But it didn't get really heavy until I moved in with him. It was like, I met him, he was going to these secret meetings, he was bringing me in a little bit, but it seemed like it was far enough away until I heard the 2012 thing, and until I started seeing the emails about Orion's Cube, Looking Glass Technologies, and then I was like, oh crap. But anyway, all of it was sort of dropped, and I ended up moving in with him, and it was probably not a good idea. That's how much of a past life connection we had. But I was convinced that I could just sort of play more of a role, or I didn't think these people were terrible, and I thought, you know, I'd be able to get to know them. So they're a group called the Aviary. John Alexander, Hal Puthoff, they all have sort of cover occupations, but deep down, like on a deeper, you know, level, they're connected to my labs, gang stalking, psychotronic weaponry, mind control, and all this sort of stuff. And they couldn't get to me directly, but they used him to try and get to me. And they call that honey trap, where they have a person, you know, that can pull you in on a heart level. Like you fall in love, like, oh, of course I'll go to Mars with you. No, the love wasn't strong enough. And like I said, instead, I was just trying to deactivate him somehow. And so I was learning all this stuff, stuff that mostly I'd heard about in movies, And all the people, all the Mars recruiters had code names. And I'm not saying they're all bad, because again, there's compartmentalism. There's some that are in the know about these deeper agendas, and others that are just being convinced that they're here to help humanity. So their code names were things like Owl, Penguin. Well, Richard, my partner, I think he was Golden Eagle. I was like, well, that's a nice one. There's Chicken Little. That was Dan Smith, who was the one that gave me all this sort of hidden information. But anyway, so they all had these code names. So there was the aviary and the aquarium. And on a cover kind of level, on a sort of surface level, they were known to handle UFO abduction stories. And so the thing with Richard is he had abduction experiences. He almost died, or like he lost all this weight. He was eating all this mistletoe, and I'm like, I think American mistletoe is poisonous. You might want to be careful. But he had abduction experiences, and immediately this group brings him in, right? And and then I'm thinking, I think that these people are behind the abduction. I don't even think this is a legitimate abduction, because the communications he was getting, he was talking to what he called the patrons and like these others, right? And I'm like, something doesn't feel right here. It's not that I don't believe in extraterrestrials, of course I do. But this is when I really started to feel into the MyLab thing. I'm like, this feels artificial. He's not getting direct communication, because what I was getting was they set him up. They had something to do with a military abduction. They had brought him in, and they wanted him to be the person that was making the Mars trip happen. And so it looked like he was pulling in them. And I was like, no. They've manipulated this whole thing. And I didn't really have any evidence about these folks, but it took about 2 weeks of nothing but total research on their names, and I wasn't getting anything. It was like, okay, Hal Puthoff is a physicist, and he's in Austin, okay? And he seems like a pretty decent guy in the work he's doing. And John Alexander, well, he was kind of creepy. I'm like, okay, he's probably something not quite right there. But it took about 2 weeks to link them with some of this other stuff, psychotronic weaponry, MyLabs, even chemtrails. And it was a Paul Benowitz case I finally found, and his name was there. And then I linked to something else. And after about 2 weeks, I was like, okay, I got what I need. Because I was onto them. I was like, something doesn't feel right here. I'm like, first of all, they don't want to talk to me. They don't want me to directly interface with them. They're using him. He doesn't realize it. He thinks he's a hero. And he's getting some sort of artificial telepathy is what I was getting. So years later, somebody came out with a website that said all this about them and what they were really up to. And I was like, yes, I knew it. Because it's hard. It's like, and I was thinking about Eisenhower, like, God, you're making decisions that could impact a lot of people. And I'm not saying that, like, whether I went or not, it would have impacted a lot of people, and I don't know, how much it's really helped that I didn't go, but I mean, I'm just glad I'm not there. But I mean, look at us. I mean, we're exposing this stuff. Of course it's doing something. And that's, incredibly important. So we've been sort of locked into this lower sort of world and kept from, the full picture. I can't seem to scroll down now. I think I can do it here. So we're being kind of kept from, our full potential. When we look at our full potential, everything about our DNA is divided into harmonic universes. So when we look at switching on DNA, we're not just switching on DNA and being like, look, we're more advanced now. I mean, what I like to say is there's nothing wrong with technology. There's going to be a lot of good technologies that'll be helpful. But when we're looking at artificial intelligence and transhumanism, that's really replacing our capacity to develop ourselves on a spiritual level. And sometimes the word spiritual gets weird for people because it's like, does it mean you have to believe in something? Not necessarily. It doesn't come from a book. Gnosis, knowledge, which is the tree of knowledge and that experience of learning through duality through all these incarnation cycles, which of course has been targeted with mind control. Knowledge is knowledge of the self. So knowledge of the self is going to help us to, turn on these dormant strands. But, if we have belief systems that, compromise our ability to be fully sovereign, then, we sort of stay stuck in this loop because something else is trying to control us. So harmonic universe 1, when we look at dimensions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, these are all different earth energies that relate to our DNA. So when we start to switch on like strands 4, 5, and 6, we move back into that sort of Taurus system. And the gates or the bridge to get there has had to be repaired. When we, switch on, DNA 789, we're in the Gaia energy. Even though this planet is called Gaia, the reason it is because she morphed into the physical planet and seeded it as an ascension planet, but we're not quite there yet. But when people say this is a 3D Earth, it's not. It's a multidimensional Earth. But it's kind of like if you put a seed in the ground, it's going to take some time for the blossoming to happen. And so the blossoming of human consciousness to me is the ascension. And there was a seed that was put in place a while back. And they've been aware of this. They've been trying to tinker with the timelines and us so that we don't benefit or expand during this time. So when we look at Tara, which exploded, that's 4, 5, and 6. What does that represent? Our heart chakra, our throat, and our third eye. So to me, the alchemy happens with the 5th. Because look at the 5th element. When we look at the pentagram pointing upward, we're connecting with the ether. And it's a 5th chakra thing. And so how are we alchemists with our 5th chakra? It's the words we speak, the words we energize. Because we're creating our reality, but our reality is created by the things we speak about, the things we think about, the things we share. So if we want to create a certain future and we energize it, we can shift things. But if we have like futility, apathy, negative thought forms, and we go into that doom and gloom or fear, then it makes it very hard. So we have to just be willing to push the envelope. And the more self-knowledge we have, the more we restore the tree of life, which is our original DNA structure. And the 12 spheres on the planet that relate to the galactic zodiac and the stargates are directly related to that. So when we can expand, when we can evolve into all that, the Earth responds to us. And so that's awesome. So 3D Earth is called Earth, 5D Earth is called Tara, 7D Earth is called Gaia. They are future and past Earths, and they exist in our multidimensional body simultaneously. So we can access all these different levels. Like you can walk into a room and somebody could be vibrating at a 7D level, even if it's not about their DNA, because the human vessel is like DNA. But we can have that ethereal DNA and eventually kind of step it down into the physical to upgrade the physical. But as we know, we have this higher and lower self. We go into these sort of epiphanies and philosophies, and sometimes we don't anchor it. We don't walk the talk. We don't make it a part of our physical reality. And so there's that division of knowing something or being aware of something. And then if we're not living a life that represents it, then it's just kind of like a pipe dream. It's like, oh, it sounds nice, but for us to really upgrade the human vessel, we have to live it. So exposing the Mars agenda is important because that's the solar plexus. That's where we're stuck on one side of the negative ego, where we're being kept in the dark. We're being used and manipulated because of that false or negative use of power. For them, it's that sort of arrogance and that greed. So we're just working with that energy when it comes to Mars. Okay. So the Draconian Orion group, also referred to as the Black Suns. The Black Suns have reversed their DNA from eons of inciting warring aggression in the universal timelines to a reverse 10 DNA strand. And they're running a reversal life current. They access limited levels of biological immortality through the vampirism and siphoning of other living things, such as planet Earth. So a lot of abduction scenarios and a lot of the manipulations have to do with taking energy, life force, kundalini, for them to use. The Sons of Belial are considered 11-strand DNA. They're more connected to the Luciferian consciousness. And so again, it doesn't need to be about the entities. It's about what energy you're choosing to run, because we have all those archetypes. I do tarot. There's 78 cards. There's the devil card. Sometimes the devil card's very positive, especially if it's surrounded by the sun or even love. If it's surrounded by love, usually you have a very magnetic connection to somebody, the horny devil. But if it's connected to anything like in the mental body that's a belief system that is negating, then it's like enslavement. You're enslaved by that sort of devil energy, right? But the devil is not about good and evil as much as it's about power and what we choose to do with that power. So we all have that energy, but I think the most important thing is that our higher consciousness is in the driver's seat, and we allow those other energies to exist without judgment so that they can flow. But if we allow the power part of us to run the show, it's very easy to slip into the misuse of it. And so for thousands of years, there's been big groups secret space program, government leaders, shadow government that basically controls it all, that have been operating from a negative ego construct. And so when the masculine and feminine are out of balance, it's easy to bring in that sort of false light ego. But when that energy is in balance, we bring in, that Christ consciousness, which allows us to have those upgrades. And, it's not about the figure. It's like, okay, right on Yeshua, Jesus, but like we all have access to Christ consciousness. Anybody that has that, usually those stories are distorted. Those teachings were more about us awakening to what we have within us versus that worship type mentality. So the seedings of the root races happened after we sank into this lower density because of this exploded planet and the imbalance of the masculine and feminine and the impact it had and what it's done to our souls. We went from a 12-strand and beyond ability. We were able to come and go from the physical as we chose, but through hybridization and through sort of the service to self mentality that was sort of introduced as a belief system into culture, and also the enslavement of certain groups during the Orion Wars, which created certain species of greys. When we sank into this lower density, there were some groups like the Aquiferians that tried to keep the vibration of the planet high. So when it was seeded as a 13-dimensional planet, because of different wars that happened, and particularly one of the first root races, Hyperborea, was Polaris Hyperborea. When Hyperborea didn't really work out because of the electric wars, because all these different ET races weren't in agreement about the seeding of the human race and having us have this experience here, they were also nervous about us moving back into these higher energies and contaminating them because they were trying to clear all of it. We have all these different groups, with these control agendas kind of, duking it out with each other, with us caught in the middle. But the root races, now we're dealing with, Polaris, Hyperborea, Atlantis, Lemuria, which is different than the original Atlantis and Lemuria. Now, with root races, it has to do with us sharing codes, us activating each other. And that's what unity consciousness is that when we're all gathering in a group, we're all giving each other pieces of the larger puzzle. So the seedings of the root races on this planet have been to reassemble the original DNA and reclaim that which was lost in the Lyran Wars with Orion groups. The 12-tree grid was designed with the Lyran Syrians to help reassemble the original avatar DNA of the human being in the lower harmonic universe to reclaim all aspects back into wholeness. It's going to be very hard to do that without exposing something like the Mars agenda because, it's kind of like if you're in a relationship with somebody and they're in a negative ego and they're doing things behind your back or they're not being authentic. It's like on a global scale, this is what we're getting from these shadow groups and how they're influencing our leaders. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that, we're dealing with, some of them are clones, some of them aren't really, who they are, some of them, are dealing with massive entity attachments. I mean, David Icke talks about shape-shifting. I'm not an expert in that or have any proof of it, but the thing is, the 13 families, they have the reptilian DNA, but they also have Orifim consciousness. They're very, very advanced, but through trauma-based mind control, they're able to keep that reptilian energy alive, which prevents that higher energy from coming in. So a lot of people that are waking up from these projects are actually now able to access their higher codes and actually offset all that stuff, which they were hoping wouldn't happen. Okay. And I meant to note that some of this information is from energeticsynthesis.com. Lisa Renee. I wrote a book which will be out in the spring, and all her information is so she words it a lot better than me. But there's so many parallels, so I quote her. This might be a little bit of a rough draft, so I don't have all the listings of quotes, so I'll just say it. That some of this stuff is a mixture of what I've learned from Keylontic Science, from energeticsynthesis.com, from my own internal work. I've done so much inner work and meditation and, and I do muscle testing when it comes to information to get as close to the truth as possible. So after we sank into this lower density, there's been a number of seedings of the human race. The third and fourth root races were where we experienced the Lemurian Holocaust, and then the Nephilim Wars, Atlantean cataclysms, and the Egyptian-Syrian invasion. And my focus is more about the rebuilding of our DNA and our connection to our 15-dimensional body, the repairing of our soul architecture, the understanding of all these archetypes and how they work, and how to be empowered to write stories that are better than the futures that they're trying to give us. So when we look at the propaganda in the media or the false flags, I mean, look at what it does to human consciousness. It immediately infects our creative channels, and we end up enabling it. You know, the minute we kind of buy into it or believe it, we're enablers. We're generating it into our environment, because we're the free energy technology. We're the advanced technology here. So if we're buying into something and those instructions come in, then, you know, they come out in our speech, in our languaging, in the way we view reality. So I think our job now is just to say, wait a second, you know, I'm sovereign. What is it that I want to manifest? Because we can generate anything. I mean, this is what they've been trying to keep us from. And so this hidden Mars agenda is like, you know, let's tinker with, you know, this life force, this power that this Mars energy represents. And, you know, and there's a lot of indigenous cultures or groups there too. And there's, you know, history there connected to Egypt, and even Maldek. I'm not an expert in all that, but, you know, everything got compromised on Mars. And so there's, you know, there's a lot about trying to maybe terraform or rebuild, you know, Mars, but there's not complete and total agreement amongst, you know, all these different species and groups. So anyway, during the Atlantean cataclysm and what is known as the Luciferian rebellion about 26 to 30,000 years ago, this is when the planetary stargates, the planetary grids and ley lines became controlled by the negative alien controlling races. Now, I talk about negative ETs, but to me it's like our immune system is much vaster than any disease we could ever have. So benevolent races, higher advanced dimensions are much more prevalent and much larger than anything negative. We're just in this sort of experience to kind of like remember ourselves and rebuild everything on the inside to change the reality on the outside. So when we upgrade our DNA and we start to move back into those higher earth energies, that's ascension. If we can switch on those DNA strands, then we can perceive a reality that's on a higher level. And because our DNA relates to different earth energies, higher earth energies, it's the initiations and our ability to integrate the light codes that are doing it. And the thing is, there's two signals coming in. And the ones that we want that are organic are based on the electromagnetic spectrum and the electromagnetic waves coming in and how it interfaces with our own electromagnetic signal that has a lot to do with the fact that our right side, our masculine side, is electric, our feminine side is magnetic, and what we hold on an auric level and on an energy level draws these ions and these downloads, these frequency downloads. And the higher our vibration is, the more information we can carry. And so when people say, oh, I just got a download, that's a good thing because you're extracting the organic ascension energies versus artificial intelligence energies that create a whole different signal, you know, that lead us down a path that digresses us and separates us more from our soul. So it's important to understand, you know, kind of how that works. It's a little bit complicated because we're talking, you know, protons and electrons and, you know, and how it affects our nervous system. But the thing is, trauma is stored in the nervous system, but same with our intuition. You know, when you just have an intuitive fit, you can feel it in your nervous system. It's like you either feel a yes or no. But if you're traumatized and you're dealing with like PTSD, you know, it's just like everything is scrambled. And then there's more confusion and challenge and difficulty. So I think all of us, to a certain degree, are trying to heal from, you know, I mean, the whole human race is traumatized. They just won't admit it. That's the thing with the wounded healer Chiron. The more we can face the wounds of humanity and of this earth, the more we're going to heal. But the more we're in denial, or the more we get like, there's nothing wrong with me, everything's fine. You know, that level of denial creates that sort of childish sort of acting out that makes it really hard to heal. So, but there are controlling races, and there is a negative ET agenda. But again, it's very small compared to the vastness of higher dimensional beings, you know, the founder groups and these, you know, higher races that are here to help. And the thing is, I don't see anything as alien. I see it as aspects of ourselves. So if we're dealing with benevolent races, it's kind of like, you know, if we're sick, the immune system's not going to do everything for us unless we step up to the plate. You know, we might need to change our eating habits or our belief systems or take extra care of ourselves. But if we keep trashing ourselves, our immune system's going to sit there and like, hey, okay, I'm here. You can't really destroy me, but you can block me and not take advantage of the fact that this is a part of nature. Nature is regenerative. The regenerative power of nature, you know, you cut yourself, your body immediately responds. You don't have to command it to. But the mind control separates us from a larger healing capacity when it comes to maybe emotional trauma or you know, DNA damage that we've inherited on an ancestral level, or anything that we might end up catching along the way that could get worse. So I look at it as, you know, Earth or humanity is either on a life support system and moves more towards transhumanism and we're kind of becoming more like zombies, or we're going to get off that table and we're going to heal holistically and we're going to get to know ourselves and we're going to, you know, switch everything on. So the thing is, love, spirit, and the immune system are always there. But it's our job to understand how to access it and utilize it and allow it to be that greater power. Without that, then you can get an infection. So anytime there's an injury, it can either heal and you get stronger and wiser, or it can get infected and you become more of a victim and compromised. And so, you know, these races use these technologies to keep themselves alive. So the artificial intelligence, the artificial telepathy, and some of these mind, it's like their whole life cycle is based on how they can stay alive via technology instead of being directly connected with spirit. And when you're not directly connected with spirit, you end up vampiring. You end up sucking from others. So, okay. So Orion groups allied with the Anunnaki resistance, they organize themselves into what is known as the intruder races of current timelines. And these beings are who orchestrate the New World Order and the highest factions of the Illuminati plan for Earth takeover. This entails creating a social class system and hierarchy, a ruling class, and a slave class on the Earth, which is the reptilian archon ideology. And that's from Ascension Glossary. I just like having backup for some of the stuff I already know that uses more terminologies than I might have been able to figure out on my own, and that's connected to Lisa Renee, and she is kind of a walk-in from the Guardian groups. And the founder races, and there's founder races, colors magenta, gold, and blue ray. The blue ray consciousness is connected to the goddess energy, and the 13th gate. So 13 is the mother arc, and our planetary body was seated with this. So when we talk about Mother Earth, or we talk about the goddess energy, we're talking about Gaia, we're talking about the planetary body and what she's supporting in our journey. But for us to connect to the 13, we then connect to the father energy, which is a whole other chakra. And these chakras are in places you can't even believe. And then the unity of the masculine and feminine birth this Christ Sophia energy, which is a miracle vibration. It's a high vibration of healing. And it's not so much about the names, because sometimes we get lost in the names, like, oh, Christ Sophia. It's like, but it's a divine template of the masculine and feminine. And so most of the DNA manipulation, most of the reasons behind these secret space programs and hidden agendas are so that we don't achieve these initiations. And the initiations come through planetary bodies, like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which are outer planets. Pluto throws us through death, rebirth, rebirth, alchemy, transformation cycles. Uranus throws us into shock and crisis that eventually wakes us up. You know how people are like, oh yeah, I had this accident or this illness, and I'm so glad it happened because it woke me up. Sometimes people don't say that for years, because they're like, I'm injured, or I'm been dealing with this crisis, and you know, something beyond our control, you know, can be very destabilizing, because we like to feel like we're in control. But Uranus and Pluto and Neptune, they work us. We don't have a whole lot of control over them. But it's like a skipper. Like, we have control over the rudder and sails, but we can't really control the weather or the waves, unless you're operating the HAARP, I guess. I can't use that metaphor when we're in a world of weather modification, but you know what I mean. It's like a skipper. It's like you're co-creating. You know, and so these greater forces, Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune, are what are giving us the upgrades. So when I look at astro charts, I look at how your relationship is with these outer planets. Sometimes for people, they're incredibly challenged. You know, they feel like they're having nervous breakdowns, they go on meds, you know, or they feel like they're dying because they're going through a death cycle, and we're not taught how to go through these initiations. And so instead of going through the initiations, we give our power away, and we lose it because nobody talks about this. Nobody helps us, you know, through this. And so we don't think it's normal. We don't think, or we think something's wrong with us when we're depressed. Well, our skies are being sprayed, our waters are clear. I mean, it's okay to be pissed off and depressed. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with us. It means we're sensitive to something that's wrong outside of us. And I think we need to have a lot less shame connected to how we feel on a daily basis, because we're under attack. And that's not a comfortable thing. Okay. So after all these cataclysms, the planet Earth tilted on its axis, which damaged all planetary gates, planetary grid networks, and the portals and stargates on the planet. And of course, that directly impacts us. All the pyramids and ET technology disconnected and went offline. Flooding and cataclysm destroyed the Atlantean colonies and much of the Earth's surface. This timeline is also referred to as the Atlantean flood, and I believe this is, even though maybe the colonization on Mars has been recent, there was life on Mars, and there was a connection between Atlantis and Mars, and I don't quite, know all the details, but I know everybody knows Corey Goode, and, I don't put my full kind of trust in anyone. I mean, I know everybody's doing the best they can, including myself. That's why I say take what resonates and leave the rest. I'm not here to say, I have it all figured out. I mean, I'm doing my best to try and connect dots, but Corey Goode is a secret space program insider and whistleblower. He began disclosing secret government information since 2015. He claims to be a delegate for the Sphere Being Alliance, a group of highly advanced extraterrestrials that claim to have humanity's best interests at heart, and began working with a faction within the secret space program that has broken off from the Cabal control groups in an effort to free humanity. This latter group is known as the Secret Space Program Alliance, which acts as a mediator between the darker groups in the secret space programs, as well as many other extraterrestrial and breakaway civilization groups. The thing is, when you're in a position like him, I mean, there can be a lot of manipulation. And the thing is, with the Sphere Being Alliance, they're supposedly slowing down the ascension because they think it's too much for humanity to be able to integrate all that light, or, because we're so used to being in a heavy density with, just these wars and this and that, and just this political system, that the energies of ascension are too much. And I'm just like, that sucks, because do you notice that, like, everything's moving slower than it should? It's like, I feel that every day. I'm just like, no, stop slowing it down. Like, it's really uncomfortable, because it shouldn't be this heavy. And like, whatever about humanity being ready, they have to be ready. If we are ready to fight in wars, if we are ready to handle the traumas that we've handled, why can't we handle the good news of ascension, which is a vibration of love and unity? But we have to be willing to talk about it for it to be comfortable for people, because it gets really confusing, how we're going to, integrate these energies when they produce symptoms that are confusing. Anyway, he describes in detail how the subterranean Earth civilizations view themselves as racially pure in contrast to surface humanity. They each describe their perceptions of those of us on the surface as uncivilized barbarians who are diseased and genetically impure. Well, okay, we had Hyperborea. Hyperborea was very, very advanced, but it ended up leading to the Electric Wars. That whole civilization collapsed, and then the Galactic Zodiac is a part of the Stargate system and a part of our nervous system. So when we moved into Ophiuchus, into the 13th gate, that's when this balance has had a chance to come back. Right opposite Ophiuchus is Osiris Orion in the sky. So when people say Ophiuchus is like Enki or something besides the feminine, it doesn't make any sense, because you would think that the feminine and masculine would be directly opposite each other. So I'm sort of like a champion for Ophiuchus, and it's the one sign that actually has is ruled by the elements fire and water. There's no other zodiac sign that's ruled by two elements. So when you put the fire and water together, it's the ether. So this is actually healing the distortions and where they've tried to create reversals with things like the dodecahedron, which connects us with the ether, so that what the Venus transits are doing in reversing the pentagram, we're really feeling into the power of Mother Earth, and that activation is happening within us, both men and women. And that process of, to me, like the soul is the soil. It receives seeds, it picks and chooses seeds, and then it generates life. But if we choose the wrong seeds, if we allow the wrong people into our life, then we're creating And this is why, you know, exposing the Mars agenda is important, because we have to get a chance to really look at what is power, you know? How has power been misused? How have we been duped? How have we been, you know, compromised? How can we get that solar plexus energy back in a way that's healthy? And have we learned all our lessons, you know, from all these different incarnations? Or are we going to enable, you know, these agendas, or put our head in the sand, or, you know, digress on some level? So, you know, it's going to take a lot. I mean, this is why these conferences are important. So, anyway, after we got infiltrated by like Anunnaki, after we, you know, after these root races and these cataclysms, we weren't looked at in a very positive way, even though we were very vulnerable and it wasn't, you know, all our fault. Anyway, wave after wave of refugees from nearby planets had since commingled their genetics with original humans on this planet and had taken over the surface world like a plague. So if we're dealing with like sinking into this lower harmonic universe, but then we're dealing with all these sort of groups that have lost, you know, maybe their home, that interfaced or interacted with humans, and then we have these advanced civilizations that were driven underground when these, you know, cataclysms happened. You know, here we are with things that could activate our potential, but now we're dealing with, you know, this sort of Draco system that wants us to be addicted to the matrix, wants us to not achieve a higher DNA strand level than what our potential is. They compromise their DNA to 10 strand. If you look up Tree of Life on the internet, you'll see 10 spheres. It's supposed to be 12. The 10 spheres is a Draco template, and we're wanting to go 12 and beyond. 12 is the Christ consciousness. And again, it's not about the figure, it's about a certain energy. So it's amazing to see some of the sacred geometries that aren't fully what they should be, that are out there. Even like Metatron's cube. I mean, there's all sorts of things that have distortions that are going to make this difficult. So we got New Age deceptions and New Age agendas that are also a part of those artificial timelines. So good refers to 4 catastrophes on the Earth's surface that led to the formation of breakaway subterranean civilizations. These catastrophes either changed the Earth axis, rotation, or orbital path around the sun. This is what drove them all underground. And supposedly we have 22 different ET genetics. Alex Collier also says that. He says that the Dracos created us as a primate race and we were modified 22 times, and that we used to have 12-strand DNA and the Orion group took out 10 strands to hold us back, because our original form is opposed to draconian philosophy, which is service to self. So these 22 separate competing programs somehow relate to our genetics that we inherited, though. So when we claim ourselves as sovereign beings and we move beyond these agendas, you know, these activations sort of happen, you know, but on our own terms instead of having something plugging into each, you know, aspect of it. So, you know, 22 different, you know, ET genetics, you know, that relates to our DNA to a, you know, a certain degree. But the essence of, you know, this junk DNA and what that holds is a whole nother world. So the inner Earth beings, this is from, you know, Corey, the inner Earth beings developed a very peaceful global culture. They used ancient builder technologies which were provided by a highly advanced extraterrestrial race called the Guardians. Over the succeeding millennia, the inner Earth beings would occasionally interact with the survivors of the surface destructions to help them rebuild their civilizations. When we look at the Guardians and the founders, you know, you got your high vibrational benevolent beings, and then you've got the fallen aspects. You got fallen seraphim, you got fallen Elohim, but the Elohai and certain aspects of the seraphim and certain aspects of all of this are never fallen. So it's like ourselves. We have our higher self. That doesn't ever fall, but there's aspects of ourselves that fall and then get back up if we're really doing the inner work. So even like Archangel Michael and Thoth and certain deities, all their teachings have been distorted. So you can do anything in the name of someone and change it. Like we see that with Christ or Yeshua. Like religion does not represent what those true teachings were, because if you look at it, the Essenes and the Templar, you know, they all got infiltrated or wiped out, and the true knowledge of alchemy ended up leaving us. And alchemy has a lot to do with the solar plexus and the Mars energy. My goal, because I connect with Venus and the Venus transits, is to unite Mars and Venus. Not to create the enemy, not to say, oh, they're all bad because this is what they did and this is what they're trying to do, but to see how we can bring those souls home again and have those that remain, you know, the ringleaders or the ones that are really behind it, you know, kind of stand out because they're not going to want to join in. But they need us. They need us, you know, to help wake them up, to help them, you know that there's like this home base to heal. So, so contrary to widespread perceptions about a single secret space program, supposedly there are about 10, and that's what, you know, Corey says. So I just, you know, quoted Corey a little bit. I don't know what everybody thinks of him. I wonder sometimes, just because that's not an easy position to be in, and who knows how he's being played. But I do feel, you know, because, okay, when we're looking at disclosure and his position in disclosure, who knows what's going on in these meetings, right? But the most disturbing in his admission is that some of the inner Earth groups have made and long maintained secret agreements with human elites on the Earth's surface. This has included agreements with German secret societies that have led to their development of a highly advanced secret space program in collaboration with the Nazi regime. And that's what I was sensing when I was recruited. I'm like, there's a Nazi energy here. So it was nice, like I said, because I didn't have any information then, and now I do. I have a lot because of, you know, other whistleblowers and everybody else. So we've got the MyLabs, we get abducted by aliens and then re-abducted by military persons who erase the memory. So if you have a positive contact experience, very often they just kind of come in and make sure you don't remember. Or, you know, if it's another type of abduction with maybe a legitimate race, they, you know, come in on a military level. What I'm getting is that they've been able to breed or create extraterrestrials that they operate, you know, artificial intelligence, you know, like and that also that some of these races are digressed humans in future timelines that are time traveling back to get genetic information in order to heal. So, I mean, it could be a number of different things. When I was dealing with the person trying to bring me into the Mars project, I was just getting that he was getting artificial telepathy about how to pull off this agenda, because the thing is, the agenda was already in the works. So they're making him look like he was creating something that was already created. And it gave him this position of so-called power, but it's like, you're not making this Mars mission happen. There's been life on Mars and colonies there for a while. They're making you feel like you're the leader of this mission there, but I'm like, this is all set up. So of course he wouldn't have that because I'm just some stupid girlfriend, right? So the military has created programs that recruit children at a very young age, as we know, and, you know, MK Ultra, of course. There's so many different projects. I mean, I know James, and you mentioned Project Surrogate, there's Project Mannequin, there's Project, gosh, you guys would know the list, but Project Mannequin, and there's obviously Project Pegasus, and that's a little bit different. It seems like, you know, that was connected to the Defense Department, and that was part of the well-intentioned agenda that I feel on some level got infiltrated, or certain individuals did, and it challenges. So then, you know, the super soldier programs, and, you know, kids are drafted at young ages, you know, pulled out of school and sent to, you know, underground bases, or sent to, you know, certain places to be trained. They call them special, take them off campus, you know, drug them, and put them through all kinds of things. Secret supposed, and so yeah, the covert military black ops, the Illuminati or cabal, as far as Corey's concerned, is called secret Earth government syndicates. I don't know if that rings a bell for anybody who's been in, you know, some of these projects. But so this is from Lisa Renee. She says, the Nordics are blonde-looking humans from Orion and are also predatorial. This species is responsible for spreading racism, genetic discrimination, genetic experimentation, such in the Nazi ideology, and they are proponents of promoting their belief systems of genetic superiority through spiritually abusive methods of eugenics. This Nordic group was directly involved with Hitler's Germany in World War II. Well, we were talking about the Vrills. You know, it's like, supposedly the Nordics appeared to Eisenhower, and a lot of people say he should have gone with the Nordics, or feel that he sold us out to the Greys. There's a lot more to this. You know, first off, if not all Nordics are positive, and you're just getting out of the Second World War, and there might be, you know, some suspicion that they're connected to, you know, German secret societies, you're dealing with a whole other thing. I mean, these treaties aren't what we think they are, because we're dealing with, the expedition from Admiral Byrd, we're dealing with them flying UFOs over, the Capitol in like the early 1950s. And so they actually made negotiations with the Nazis, and it was more of a surrender. He didn't want to make agreements with the Nazis. Nobody, that was on humanity's side did. But him and Truman pretty much seemed to have their hands tied. But, everybody talks about ET government treaties and doesn't talk about what they were dealing with after the Second World War, and how the war really wasn't won, and they were still trying to negotiate with the Nazis. So I found this interesting. I don't know if this is necessarily true, but I was Googling around because I had sort of an epiphany that the Draconians are a dominant race that are connected with the Enki, because it's not that any of this is bad. It's the Draconian energy needs to be raised in vibration up to the dragon to heal the dragons, to heal the dragon grids too. It seems the Draconians are just this warring race that came in with a differentiation of the masculine and feminine, sort of opened this portal for this other race to come in from a completely different universe. So we know, like in our own life, if we're out of balance, we can attract entities, we can attract a vulnerability to catching illnesses or disease. So if the masculine and feminine are starting to get off balance, it makes sense that some portal or some opening would happen and a warring race would come in and take advantage of that. Like, oh look, everything's getting off balance. Let's go in and take advantage of this. And maybe the Nordics are connected to the humanoid groups that are the dominant race of the Enlil. And of course, Enki and Enlil are connected to the Anunnaki in certain timelines. What gets confusing is that humanoid races join with the Dracos. So the humanoids are in both groups. Hitler referred to the Nordics as the master race. And that's Sherry Schreiner. I don't get into much of her work, but anyway, also from Lisa Renee and what she's brought in from the Guardians. During the time that Franklin D. Roosevelt was president, several species of gray aliens contacted all the major world governments and made secret treaties with many of them. Churchill is actually the one who was the first to make the deals. So back when I was first researching and talking about this stuff, I was just talking about the ET treaties with Eisenhower, because that's all I really knew, and that's the rumors I heard. So I was like, okay, well, let's bring more of a voice to this, because first of all, I'm the only person in the Eisenhower family that's talking about ETs and UFOs and anything related to this level of secrecy. So I've been willing to I'm here for the truth, even if it were to make him look bad. I mean, I sort of understand, how difficult it was during that era, especially after, a war, a major war. But there's way more that I found out, and I kept sort of following my intuition, like there's more to the story, there's more to the story. It didn't all start with Eisenhower. I don't even feel like he sold us out, but supposedly it was Churchill. The intention was to create continual world wars, which is the strategy of divide and conquer the human race, keep them busy, and drain them of all the resources from the earth and the life force of humans to serve their agendas. Aleister Crowley was actually a key figure in cooperating with the negative alien agenda, starting from gray alien contact in Cairo, Egypt, which began a lifelong series of interactions and collaborations to bring into physical manifestations satanic forces. So mostly we're dealing with like the Baphomet, we're dealing with the reversals, we're dealing with like the dark mother energies. And what this ascension period is about is actually anchoring the feminine back into the earth, which activates the diamond sun and also our diamond sun DNA, which is also connected to the Emerald Order and Orphan consciousness. And so this is a major time of a lot of people who are on missions that are starting to hear the calling of what it means right now to... The thing is, there's no hierarchy. This whole chosen one thing is such a manipulation. I mean, love is the chosen one. We have to recognize that, it's our consciousness, it's our integrity, and that we're the activators. The minute you wake up to your mission, the minute you kind of understand the game being played, and you begin to move through these initiations, even if it makes you feel like you're going crazy, you become an activator. How cows lay down when it's about to rain? Some individuals are going to get the light codes or the activations more than others. And so there's other humans that are going to have to get that supplement through a human because they don't know how to get it naturally, because that AI and sort of all the media stuff and all the distortions that we're raised with have captured them. So sometimes those one-on-one interactions are what gives them the activation, but they don't know how to necessarily directly get it. So I look at us like workers, like we're the cows that lay down before it rains. Like we just know something's happening, and and we're able to integrate it, and then we share it. And when we share it, I mean, it comes through our voice. I mean, that's the part of us that's alchemy. It's the 5th chakra. So when we speak, when we do conferences, I mean, even if the numbers are small, we're having a huge impact. The thing with the aura from consciousness, too, which the human race was seeded with, that we're learning to turn back on, basically what it means is that our 12-strand DNA connects with the Trinity, so we have the full picture and the full capacity to operate on a really, really high level. Sometimes it can just take a room full of 10 people that are aware of that. The thing is, not some people have it and others don't. It's just some people are born knowing their mission and knowing that they're here to activate. And then when a person allows themselves, it's like you can't heal somebody unless they're willing. You can't activate somebody unless they're open. But it doesn't take huge numbers. We can be in a room, I mean, look at, there was only, what, 12 apostles? I mean, I don't know, I'm not a biblical person. But the whole point is it doesn't matter the numbers. The influence and power that we can have is huge. The book Power versus Force by, is it Hawkins? Yeah. David Hawkins? You know, one person calibrating above the frequency of 500 can offset millions of people that are unconscious and asleep. So one person who's awake and raising their vibration can offset so many people that are asleep. So when we come together, we have to figure this is rippling out, and it's having even an unconscious effect. You know, and at times, you know, you might activate somebody at the grocery store, and they might be in a fetal position for a week and not know what the hell hit them, and come out the other end just like, whoa, completely different. You know, because they allowed themselves to receive the seeds. Because I see it's like dandelions, like we're blowing these seeds. You know, but if we pay too much attention to who's getting it and who's not, we're going to get super bummed. So it's kind of like we're at a parade and we're throwing stuff out to the crowd, but if we jump off and we're like, are you eating it? Do you like it? You know, you're like, no, I just put it in my pocket, or I just stepped on it and crushed it. Then it's like, oh my God, nobody's waking up. I mean, we just got to keep moving forward. So I almost see us like, you know, we're in a parade, we're a resource. We're throwing the seeds out, taking or leave with people. And that's not our responsibility, but our responsibility is to be a resource and to be a beacon of love, but not worry too much about who gets it or who doesn't. I have people still apologizing to me for how mean they were when I first came out with the Mars stuff. They're like, you know, because we thought you were crazy, and it's like, how can you think somebody's crazy? I mean, like, you know, it's like, if I really wanted to write the script, I would have made a screenplay and made money. So, and I really don't want that much attention. So anyway, interesting about Aleister. So Aleister Crowley was an incarnated solar temple lord that was one of the abusers of the power from the Atlantean time cycle. He does have a great tarot deck, though, that I have. I clear it of his energy. It's a really good deck. So the timeline sequence was Crowley meets Churchill, who masterminds the World War II agenda to manipulate and mind control Hitler, who then proceeds with his psychotic Atlantean Black League, Sons of Belial agenda, with planned mass genocide, and begins to target the depopulation of the indigo or host race for the human DNA evolution in this last 30,000 year cycle, which are the Hebrews. They're not the chosen ones, but they were a root race. They came in to offset a lot of, you know, these wars, and I mean, we have to share codes and be able to ascend, and so they had something for all of us, but they became patriarchal and they became infiltrated, and the whole Yahweh thing, and supposedly, you know, there's an imposter, the Orion groups were standing behind that name, Yahweh, and just distorted all of it. And so the Melchizedek line that we're hosting the Ascension timeline were very compromised. But anyway, that group is still targeted. And ever since 2009 to 2012, the hosting of the Ascension timeline has moved to the planetary body and the goddess energy within everybody. And I'm not on any side, like, you know, race doesn't matter to me. I'm just fully into unity consciousness, and I see, you know, this obsession with survival of the flesh versus development of the soul, and just how much they're in survival, wanting to use us. And, you know, we can't allow it. And the thing is, you know, they're allowed, I mean, they can come into a more advanced line and heal and go through whatever karmic cleansing they need, but they've got so much that's accumulated that I think they're just so freaked out by it that they just don't want to. But they make it very difficult for anybody to incarnate into their lines to heal the DNA or to open it up to this higher consciousness. But there's a lot of individuals that are born into these families that have been able to do that regardless, because there's just a lot to all of it. So the Dracs manipulated occultist knowledge with Hitler, and knowing that the genetic host for this 26,000-year cycle was the Hebrews, they wanted them all decimated. Crowley-Churchill-Hitler connection is what established the gray alien agreements and with the government. And yes, they say, the Guardians say, that Churchill actually met the aliens while he was prime minister, and the beginning of the technology trade, Churchill and UK wanting it for world domination, that led to the human experiments such as mind control through psychotronics and time travel. Churchill did not have racial sympathies and had even less compassion for the general masses. It was during his influence that he was one of the men that allowed 5,000 or so children to be abducted from poor areas and gave the Greys the rights to genetic testing of the population. According to the Guardians, when they took something like 10 times that amount, they knew they were in over their head and they could not control what they had led the world population into. So lots of rumors about how Eisenhower was the one that signed these treaties, but a lot of whistleblowers say that by the time he came into office, it was more of a surrender, and it was more about the negotiations with the Nazis who were already relating to the Dracos. They had made that decision. So the secret space program has been owned and controlled by a very dark aspect of our planet for some time, an intergenerational cult dating back to at least the Roman Empire. Many have called these secret Earth government syndicates the Illuminati or Cabal. Since these secret Earth government syndicates had very negative spiritual beliefs, they ended up allying with the most evil and powerful ET group of all, a confederacy of reptilian humanoid races collectively known as the Draco. So the Nazi space program became operational during the Second World War, despite the defeat of the Axis powers. And what's funny in our history books is everyone's like, oh, we won the Second World War and Eisenhower's such a hero. Eisenhower's a good man, and he was looking out for us, and he absolutely wanted the best for humanity, but we didn't win the war. We're still in the war. And the thing is, how do we win the war? We win the war within. Because it's a war on consciousness. It's a war on us being fully liberated beings. So if we want to win the war, we got to look at what's going on in here. How are we being compromised? What are we giving our power away to? What are we allowing to run the show? If we're not standing in our power, something else is. So, I mean, that's how the nature of the war has moved. And so people don't really recognize the war. I mean, if you can't look at the sky and see that, I mean, the amount of denial about something that's so damn obvious, I mean, if people can't just handle the chemtrail part, how are we going to handle, like, when it really is time for contact and real disclosure? People can't even wrap their head around the fact that, our skies are being sprayed, or they seem to be making some sort of excuse for, what it is they're actually doing. Because people are so invested in needing to trust the system for some reason, like they're married to it. It's like, it's kind of mind-boggling. So the Nazis, according to Corey, escaped to secret bases in South America and Antarctica, where they established an alliance with a group of extraterrestrials called the Dracos. The Nazis were then able to successfully defeat a punitive military expedition by Admiral Byrd called Operation High Jump in 1947. The only reason I keep quoting him is because I'm choosing quotes that I have already had validated from other resources. And I pulled a lot of this together when he first came out. I avoided his stuff for quite a while. I was like, I don't know. And so I kind of take what resonates, and there's some that doesn't. And it's not that it doesn't, it's just I'm not sure how this whole disclosure thing is being handled. And I'm certainly not feeling like waiting around for it all to be figured out, because we're going to make it happen. We're doing it right now. I mean, and that's what it's about. So anyway, they still tried to stop the Nazis after the war. The Americans decided to wipe out the last of the Nazis in South America, and basically, as their asses were handed to them in an unfair, off-balance skirmish, and the admiral returned to brief the president and joint chiefs of the situation. They contacted some of the paperclip scientists who knew about the Nazi base and began to negotiate with the Nazis. The negotiations were heated and one-sided. Both President Truman and General Eisenhower refused to agree to the terms of the Nazis until they flew UFOs over Washington, D.C. from July 12th through July 29th, 1952. Above the president, MJ-12 had made it a secret law in 1947 that the entire subject and knowledge of UFOs and their occupants was to remain the highest guarded secret, only above atomic weapons. This forced the hand of both Truman and Eisenhower, and they signed treaties with various non-human and advanced Nazi groups. But if you think about it, Churchill had already sold out the human race. We tried to win the war, didn't really win the war. The level of advanced technology that we felt we couldn't sort of combat, you know, led to, you know, agreements. And so this is really where the development and infiltration of the military-industrial complex began, and eventually led to the most powerful of the secret Earth government group entities that we are referring to as the interplanetary corporate conglomerate. I mean, there's so many different levels and layers that you talked about, but what I, you know, felt with the aspect of the secret space program I was looking at, you know, it was a very, I mean, it was somewhere in the middle. If you look at all the different things, and we weren't going to teleport there, we were going to travel on something called arcs. And they named one arc Merlin and one Sophia for some reason. And it all sounded really positive, like Merlin and Sophia, that's awesome. And it just was all sort of decorated with this great adventure. And, you know, so part of me was like, you know, the explorer and traveler in me was like, cool. But again, because I wasn't given any access to the group directly and they didn't want to listen to any of my ideas, you know, just about how we're going to take care of this planet and maybe utilize these advanced technologies to feed those that are hungry. You know, maybe we could just like start there. Like, let's take care of the human race before we go off and colonize Mars. Or could we at least talk about how we're going to do that? Because I'm not just going to go off planet with my kids without figuring some of this stuff out. And it's just like all silence, like just shut up. We don't care. The Americans fully planned on infiltrating the Nazis and taking them over. As is not obvious, the opposite occurred. Nazi occult societies therefore infiltrated every single high-tech corporation and position of power inside the now joint breakaway civilization program. They have been involved in all Western space programs and projects ever since. Morgan Martell discusses on his website about Project Paperclip, which took place after the Second World War. One purpose of the operation was to inhibit post-war Germany from redeveloping its military research capabilities. One of the fields that Nazi doctors and psychologists had made advances in was that of social and behavioral engineering in humans, also known as mind control. There's so much more to it, though, when you look at the concentrated projects. You know, those that are targeted and put in, you know, and we've got, you know, some, you know, really powerfully courageous and strong individuals here that, you know more about this, that have, you know, been pulled into this. And I think Lindsay mentioned some school that they had, some Project Paperclip school.
Jones Academy.
Right. So the Office of Strategic Studies resorted to whitewashing the histories of Nazis, or sometimes even creating entirely new identities, which made it easy for them to spread their influence in America. In 1946, Truman authorized Project Paperclip without really realizing what he was authorizing. So it has been said by the whistleblower of M16, actually James Caswell, who I heard just got out of jail. Yeah. And he's staying in some big mansion somewhere.
Oh, no.
Well, I get this email thread by somebody that really creeps me out. I don't know why I'm on the thread, but it gives me all the updates about everything. And he always ends it with the battle the battle to take over planet Earth or something. And I wrote him one time and he was so obnoxious and mean. But I'm staying with the subscription just because I get some of the news. But he calls James, you know, their 007 agent, and how they're doing all this stuff to try and help him. And I don't know. I mean, if he's out of jail, I've worked with his ex, Haley Meyer. She was a client of mine for a while, and so there's just a lot of really heavy stuff there. He's put out a lot of amazing material, you know, Agent Buried Alive, but something. And I know James, you know him pretty well, no?
Yeah, I was with them right before they split up.
Wow. Because he seemed to be on a good track for a while, and then he just turned really misogynist and Nazi-like again.
I think he got alter activated.
Yeah. Anyway, so I got in a big argument with him, and I'm like, well, I don't think I want to argue with a trained assassin. I'm just going to press delete and block. Because he was just totally pushing my buttons, and he was being really like... So anyway, he's out of jail, and hopefully everything will be cool. Just... Because they keep associating him with Archangel Michael, and this is what I'm seeing with these distortions of these energies as they get stepped down and they get used and controlled. You know, they can siphon and use those energies. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how it works, but I don't know why they keep associating him with Archangel Michael. Anyway, so it has been said, the whistleblower of M16 actually is James, that the CIA was created almost 2 years after Project Paperclip and the American National Security Act of 1947 to handle the massive number of mind control, cloning, and other covert projects that were born from Paperclip. MJ12 was also created as a group dealing in ET investigations, and the group that was recruiting me to Mars was associated with MJ12. And I just found somebody who was a Jason scholar who I'll be talking to in the next couple of days, and that was another group that was set up. So, by the time Eisenhower stepped into office, the draconian system had already infiltrated the three-letter organizations, and eventually defense-related projects got infiltrated as technology exchanges took place and wasn't easily monitored. I mean, the thing is, it's like, you know, he was a general in the war. I believe that he was pushed into the presidency, didn't really want to be president, but he's dealing with like people like Rockefeller. He's dealing with Illuminati people, but he's not Illuminati, right? If we were an Illuminati family, I think we'd have like a trust fund or something, or like life would be a little easy. But I wouldn't want the bad money. You know, he put a time capsule in the Gettysburg Farm about what he knew about, you know, and what his so-called advisors were really about. But the time capsule is not to be open until 2050. So every time I go to the Gettysburg Farm, I have to put down my tool that I want to bash the walls down with to see what it has. It says, because I think I'll be in my 80s by the time it's time to be open, and who the hell's going to be there, like, to open it? I mean, like, who's going to call, like, hey, it's time to open it? Like, I'm just going to show up there on the date and just be like, I'm just going to bash down the walls. And I'll just say, hey, you know, my mom wrote a book. Hey, it's my mom's book. Okay, so the Bilderberg Group was created in 1952 to take the decision-making about the alien problem and other international issues out of the hands of governments. Oh, isn't that nice? That's actually where everything... And the thing is, when you're trying to be president, you can't be that exopolitical person. You're just trying to, you know, manage everything else. And so, you know, Eisenhower did his best to, you know, handle this exopolitical situation, but I don't think he called in the right people. I don't think he knew that some of these people were, I don't think he realized they were up to as much bad as they were. Anyway, these groups saw the surface government as a threat, because as we see, you know, you can vote a well-intentioned person into office. Then we always wonder, why aren't they doing anything? You know, why aren't they addressing this? And sometimes things will slip out. I think Obama said in some interview something about how, you know, the aliens want total control and there's nothing we can do. It's like, whoa, okay. It was on some interview. Anyway, so over the years, the Bilderberg Group evolved into, or merged with, a secret world government. By now, it's almost entirely populated by Illuminati. Okay. Because this particular treaty in 1954 was agreed upon between the aliens and the ultra units in the NSA, which actually is a government unto itself, they in effect turned away help from outside benevolent races. Wow. Hi. You can hear me okay, obviously. I was going to say this, it didn't sound as loud as I thought it would be. So what's interesting is Alex Collier says that the treaty in 1954 was agreed upon between the aliens and the ultra units in the NSA. And supposedly, this unit of the NSA, other people in the NSA don't even know about or have heard of. So it's actually a government unto itself, just like Area 51's like its own reservation. It's got its own, it's almost like its own country. Eisenhower tried to order an invasion, wasn't possible. If anybody's seen the interview with Anonymous, I was supposed to go to that interview, and basically he's on his deathbed, you know, saying that they were gonna, you know, do this massive attack. Eisenhower was really upset that all this stuff was going on and he didn't really have a full grasp of what was going on. But if this is true about Alex Collier and what he says, he's a contactee of the Andromedans, this shows that it wasn't even the president who signed anything, but it was this unit of the NSA, and the rumored treaties were just a scapegoat to disguise the agreements that had already been made. So, okay, well, what about all those other whistleblowers? I've done tons of presentations about what Gerald Light has had to say, or, you know, all these different individuals. Maybe it was a clone. Maybe it was just, you know, set up that way. Maybe they made them say that. Who knows? Maybe it's not true about this unit of the NSA, and they did sign the treaties, but again, there were negotiations with the Nazis. That's a more important factor because stuff was going on with the Greys and the Dracos way before all of this. So, and then if the Nordics showed up, the great thing is Valiant Thor showed up in the 1960s, and they're connected with Venus, and there's no question about whether or not they're benevolent, whereas the other ones, it's a little bit more confusing. You know, when you have a group of individuals or a race or a species of ETs that really want us to be sovereign and to, you know, learn how to kind of save ourselves, you know, that's a good thing. It's not that we want to turn down help, but we're not going to get very far if it's all done for us. I mean, this is part of the human experience in learning. So anyway, the NSA is exempt from all laws in the United States unless the NSA itself is specifically mentioned in any creation of law. It is completely separate, yet our tax dollars are funding it. There was also a great deal of private money used by the NSA to build the alien technology and to keep humanity under control and keep the status quo secure. Even the CIA doesn't know much about the ultra or blue units of the NSA. These are the two highest units the NSA has that deals directly with alien technology and information. And so, again, that's Alex Collier, contactee of Andromeda Council. So during the Eisenhower administration, alternatives 1, 2, and 3. So there's books or movies about alternative 3. Alternative 3 is the colonization on Mars. So when President Eisenhower was in office, he commissioned a secret society known as the Jason Society in 1955, which is considered to be a branch of MJ-12. Truman established MJ-12 while in office. The Jason Scholars was created to sift through all the facts, evidence, technology, lies, and deceptions, and to find the truth of the alien question. Okay, well, whatever they found, if they found any deception or lies, nobody told us. And there's been all this secrecy. I mean, look at William Cooper that was killed. Look at Phil Schneider. I mean, the threats and the laws that were put in place, you know, make it very difficult. I mean, he did want to share what he knew, but I mean, that's what I've heard. But then even in the Law of One, it states something about an experiment where they wanted to see what would happen if all this contact, you know, took place. But, you know, I believe a lot of documents have been altered, so it's hard to say. So alternatives 1, 2, and 3. The first alternative is about the use of nuclear devices to blast holes in the stratosphere from which heat and pollution could escape into space. The second aims at building a network of underground cities and tunnels in which mankind's select elite could survive. The third deals with a secret space colonization program on Mars with the same purpose. Phil Schneider mentioned that there are about 131 deep underground military bases in the USA. Others have mentioned 4,000 worldwide. So this is all about the possible protection of the human genome. Well, it's not very fair if, like, okay, you get some elitists underground or off planet. It's like, well, what's happening on the Earth's surface? Is it catastrophes? Are they trying to create a new world order? What are these breakaway civilizations doing? And when you've got this compartmentalism and you've got all these different factions, you know, I mean, again, it sounds like a good idea to protect a certain amount, but it doesn't seem fair to compromise the whole human race. And, you know, my goal is like, well, let's expose as much as we can, as much of the technologies as we can, as much about the treaties as we can, and much about this agenda as we can, and really figure out who's working for who. I pretty much determined that Hillary is on the dark side and is Illuminati. I don't know if you guys all agree, but you know, when we see, you know, the book by Kathy O'Brien, Transformation of America, and all the abuse she endured, supposedly under Hillary Clinton, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. And I don't believe, you know, it's a legitimate connection between her and Bill anyway. And I just feel this darkness in her. So alternatives 1, 2, and 3 are 3 agendas recommended by Jason Society scholars and are related to different scenarios to prevent a possible future doomsday that is more than likely induced and not natural. So as I was suspicious about the group that my partner was working with, because I couldn't directly connect with them, but I was, you know, studying who they were and what their names were and what they were connected with, that's when I started to educate myself about HAARP and chemtrails and what they're capable of doing to create these artificial timelines. So as well-intentioned as these agendas might be to some, as long as you're able to control things and create artificial timelines, we got to be real careful here. And as much as maybe the cat's out of the bag and they didn't want this information coming out, because it ruined their maybe benevolent plan to protect the human genome. With this amount of knowledge about what happened after the Second World War, it's not smart to allow it to be quiet, because for us to win the war, we've got to get the full picture. The Montauk Project has a history of colonization on Mars between Orion humans and Zetas. These were dimensional blending projects with alien technologies that allowed time travel to the future. Here's where we can see the connection between the Nazi agenda and Alternative 3 agenda. So, you know, there's a lot going on in connection with Mars. You got Project Pegasus, but you also have Montauk, and, you know, I think in a lot of ways they're very different. From a book called Spacegate, The Veil Removed, it is suggested that the Bilderberg, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission are the secret government, and they have their hands on all the alien technology and run their show through MJ-12. Eisenhower didn't trust MJ-12 and so set up a unit in the United States Marine Corps to keep an eye on them, and he also warned us in his final speech. So supposedly Captain K is a part of that group. It's a special section of the US Marine Corps, and supposedly they work with like the cancer fighting ETs, and they have a super soldier program that's benevolent to, you know, it's not like trauma-based, it's not about torture. They create these sub-personalities in order to, you know, fight these particular battles with other, you know, super soldiers. Because, you know, if those are already being created, how are you going to defeat them, or how are you going to, I mean, you got to kind of like, they didn't want to, but they ended up creating their own super soldier program, supposedly. And Captain K lives in Eugene, where I live, but I haven't told him I told him I live in Bend. Just because I know that the minute he knows I'm there, it's like, God only knows how my life is going to change. And I like him and everything, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel like the story is made up just to hook me in, like, oh, you know, Eisenhower set up the special section of the United States Marine Corps, and, you know, and we should be really good friends, because he kept saying, you know, if it wasn't for your great-grandfather, God only knows, you know, where the planet would be and where I would be. And so it all sounds very warm and fuzzy, but, you know, I'm just kind of waiting on it a little bit, just because some red flags have come through, but I'm sure he's fine. But you just have to be careful. And when it comes to a place that, it's different if I were visiting him, but it's where I live, and it's like, I don't want him to know where I live. And it's nothing against him, it's just, who knows who's operating through what and who, you know? And until I really have a decent handle on it, I'd prefer not to give out my personal address or let anybody really know where I live, even though I basically said where I live, but I didn't give my address. I live somewhere in Eugene now. It's fine. Okay, so in 2000, and nothing against Captain K at all. It's just things need to be dealt with from a distance first, is all. All right, so in 2006, they attempted to recruit me into a hidden operation regarding the Alternative 3 colonization of Mars scenario. There's, like I said, pre-targeting before birth. Looking glass technologies were used. I'd never heard of, I mean, and Orion's cube, and supposedly it's based in like Sumerian cylinder seals, and they're able to look into the future and into the past. And supposedly after 2012, they're not able to see anything. And that's interesting, because we were supposed to leave in 2012 to go to Mars. That was the target date. So I'm thinking, if you don't know what's happening past 2012, why the hell are we leaving? I felt, you know, this is a time of creativity. This is a time that the human race is going to be waking up, where we're going to take charge of our destiny. And that this is an incredible time. So why would I want to be on a different planet when I can help remind humans of what we're all about, what we're truly made of, and what our potential is? When I was in my early 20s, I was in Mexico City sitting next to the Aztec calendar, and the tour guide was talking to a group of people, and I was just sort of listening in, and he said, they don't know what's going to happen after the fifth sun. So then later on, it's like, oh, they don't know what's going to happen after 2012, these technologies are saying. So what's funny is I got a tattoo of the Aztec calendar with Kundalini and fire, water, and the 1,000-petaled lotus of the goddess energy, and I was like, I don't know, I just got to write this down. Because I was living in the DC area, and you couldn't talk about this stuff. You know, I was that person who would drink too much and just be like, like this window period we're heading into, and this is what's going to happen. What are you talking about? And, or at the dinner table, you know, if Eisenhower family gatherings, don't give Laura too much champagne, because God only knows what's going to come out of my mouth. But I've been really aware of this stuff, and so I knew, like, this era, this whole 2012 window period, this stellar activation cycle we're in, is a time of powerful creativity. So in powerful creativity can be powerful manipulation that uses our creative energy to enable the agendas that they want. So I was like, okay, well, we got to take charge here. We got to make sure that whatever they don't know is going to happen, we take charge of. So it's almost like we're being handed an empty canvas with paintbrushes. And it's either we allow somebody to grab our hand and tell us what it's going to be, or we're going to like stand in our power and say, this is the way we want it to be. Because we're completing these myths. These archetypes live within us. So anyway, I knew if I were to go to Mars, I wouldn't be able to assist in this organic ascension. And it was said, you know, this is part of why I was targeted to go, because they wanted to use that energy instead of have me, you know, do what I do here. And I get death threats and I feel threatened sometimes, but I feel a lot safer talking about this stuff than I did when I was just contending with them without having a voice. I think they know that offing me is not really going to serve them or help at this point, because it might draw attention to what I've already put out there. So it's been a little bit of a interesting journey to kind of step around some of their attacks and some of, you know, the targeting, but, you know, I feel protected. I don't feel it. Because people are like, you know what, it's hard to believe your story because you're alive. I'm like, okay, well, I guess if I were to die, I would just, what, have somebody channel this? I'll just pick somebody to channel it? Like, I don't know. Anyway, so I was being prepared as a kid for all this. So what it comes down to is alternatives 1, 2, and 3 got infiltrated, as far as I'm concerned, and corrupted, because there was also already that Nazi component. When it came to breakaway civilizations and secret space programs, manipulation and total takeover by the shadow government, basically. And that was what Eisenhower wanted. So he legally signed into law the USMC special section to watch MJ-12 who have their hands on the alien technology, along with these other groups that are connected to the Illuminati. Supposedly it's an ethical super soldier program to balance the situation called Project Moonshadow. The Eisenhower administration actually stopped supporting Alternative 3. Supposedly somebody told me he was briefed that he would have a descendant come in and handle some of this. I don't know if that's true. But it's like, okay, whatever. So they're now allowing full disclosure legally. He signed into law supposedly that if things got to a certain point that those that are in this special section of the U.S. Marine Corps would be legally allowed to disclose everything. But again, I don't put my full trust in anything or have fixed beliefs. I just have an open mind and observe. But one of my favorite quotes is, I think that people want peace so much that one of these days governments had better get out of their way and let them have it. It's like, yep, I've never voted. Okay, so I declined to go to Mars because I believe the power of the human spirit. This is a powerful, powerful ascension window period. And so on a cosmic level, it's like, we're moving into this greater connection with spirit that's available to us. For some, it's kind of a turnoff because, you know, if you think about it, if you say the word Jesus Christ or if you say the word God, people don't like that. Religion's ruined it. You can't even say these words without people thinking you're whacked. Even if you're not coming from a place of religion, right? I'm not religious at all. But it's sad, you know, even the word ascension and I can't even stand the word New Age. It's like, the New Age, blah. But I'm like, God, you know, we are in a New Age, but all this other crap has kind of ruined it, and religion's ruined all these names, and, you know, poor Jesus, and everybody that's all about Jesus are just such pains in the butt, and they knock on your door. I don't know, those are the Jehovah's Witnesses, but we need to understand these initiations, because this is in our DNA, this is in our divine template. So anyway, I declined to go to Mars because I believe in the power of the human spirit. I could also sense that something was not right about the recruitment. The aviary is a collection of strange birds, a group of key scientists, military men, and intelligence agents who share an interest in UFOs, telepathy, remote viewing, parapsychology, mind control, and the creation of psychotronic weapons. And that's on a website. If you just Google the aviary and John Alexander, you'll see all the stuff about them. I should have the link here, but you just Google it and all the stuff is there. So I know we're going to the stars. I mean, this is what humans do. We're explorers. But we need to take care of this planet, and we need to develop ourselves in this shift time, or we will keep taking the same problems and dilemmas to other worlds, and we need to be the ones that stop the pattern. Nazis infiltrated the U.S. national security system and undermined the independence of U.S. and international space programs, civilian and military. Slave labor continues with organizations the Nazi breakaway civilization infiltrated, such as the operation on Mars. There are currently spiritually disconnected humans existing on the Earth that will be assimilated into synthetic life forms that appear as EBEs, extraterrestrial biological entities, but were actually human souls and human bodies in past timelines. They are unable to evolve, reproduce, ascend, or move into higher dimensions of consciousness. Some of these EBEs have returned to Earth from the future to try and break into the human genetic code in this Earth timeline in order to save themselves. Many of these EBEs were once humans that were involved in the Orion Wars and were captured in Orion and used as worker colonies. I mean, they want our help, they need our help, and that's understandable. But they also aren't necessarily doing it in the best way. A lot of the rumors that I heard originally were the way they presented themselves to the Eisenhower administration was they needed help because they were a dying race. So a dying race is a race that's digressing. Well, why would they digress? Well, they're either like being, enslaved and used, or they've chosen that path of transhumanism and they've gotten further disconnected from their soul, which creates, digression and creates, the physical vessel to be compromised. So if you're going to run into an underground base or off planet, you're also going to, your human vessel, your biological form is going to change. But the thing is, how can we guard ourselves from artificial intelligence? It surrounds us. It's a part of our world, and believe it or not, things like integrity and being a being of love and just taking care of yourself, and there's protection that comes with that. And it doesn't have to be religious. Being a spiritual being and having integrity is just a good way to be. It doesn't need to come from anything else but just that desire to evolve and expand. Okay, so there are meetings with the beings from Venus in the 1960s. From Stranger at the Pentagon by Frank Strange is a meeting with the president. His last meeting with the president did not reap any lasting results. He wanted to let the world know of Val's proposed plan, which had to do with helping the human race and helping us to reach a higher potential, less dependency on all this manipulation like the medical industry and all these things that sort of feed on our vulnerability. And the thing is, when we have physical symptoms, it's our chance, it's a blessing in a way. It's our physical body trying to send us a message. But the medical industry makes it like a disease, an affliction, something to be, struggling with, something to be almost uncomfortable about, and it's an opportunity. And so, anyway, Valiant Thor, had a great plan, but the Secretary of Defense, the head of the Central Intelligence Agency, and the military chiefs of staff were opposed to his suggestion. The president attempted to effect a joint meeting before the General Assembly of the United Nations. This plan was too rejected. He was informed that the UN would receive a special press release in the form of a memorandum to the Secretary General no later than February 7th, 1966. These leaders of the US government argued long into the night, fearing that if people of this nation learned of the plan of Valiant Thor, they might choose to follow him instead of them, which meant less dependency on governments, the economy would crash. What would they do with an empowered human race? They wouldn't be able to keep up the system, the matrix, in the same way. So at one point, the vice president insisted that the pressure boys allow the president to make the choice. He was vetoed without having a chance to complete his statements. So here's a president that had a lot of contact. We're talking like a lot of different races. And I've always wondered, how did I end up in this family? Why did I incarnate into this family? Well, I know having a big mouth is part of it, because this stuff needs to be talked about. This stuff has been kept secret, and we all need to just be a part of this conversation, to share information, to focus on like the love and respect and camaraderie, instead of my information's right and yours isn't, or the battle that can happen on an ego level between individuals. And my goal is to help us to kind of move beyond that, because the information's important, just to kind of rearrange our brains and get it right. But the real important thing is unity consciousness and the mutual love and respect and ability for us all as a human race to hold hands together and rehabilitate, admitting that we are in that Chiron energy, and that we are finding knowledge in the wounds. The wounded healer is giving us a chance to restore that gnosis and knowledge that's been targeted with mind control, which turns the wounds into things that we run to escape, whether that's TV, whether it's an addiction, whether it's something that just keeps us from having to feel and face it. And it's not fun. I don't like it. I'm tired. I'm tired of having to do the inner work and look at it all. But knowing that we're not alone in it is awesome, and that's why I do readings for people. So anyway, so the Germans succeeded in establishing bases on the moon, Mars, and even interstellar travel during the 1940s, according to information that Good shares. He also asserts that the agreements made with the inner Earth humans was recently broken by the Cabal, whose power base was threatened when their most important ally, an extraterrestrial race called the Draconians, signaled their intent to abandon the Cabal Illuminati. So supposedly, whatever agreements, the Dracos are ready to abandon them no matter what they promise them. They're trying to get, off planet. I mean, it's almost like kryptonite to them right now with these high frequencies coming in. They expected us to be way more enslaved than we are right now, I can tell you that. This is really, we've done amazing. I mean, as much as it feels like we're not getting very far, we're a lot farther than we think. With all that's been trying to stop us and enslave us even more so than we already are, I mean, we're kind of stable, we're not getting worse or better right now. I just see us sort of in a stable place. But the decisions we make from this point on are really, incredibly important. The sphere being alliance, I'm not going to kind of go into, all that, but it's connected supposedly with the Guardians. These big spheres have been coming in. And it seems like they're trying to buffer the ascension because we are in this position with the galactic plane. And the intensity, is there. But I think for some of us that have been ready for a long time, it's incredibly uncomfortable to not have the energies be as high as they should be. The Dracos are the ones that are connected to artificial intelligence. So a lot of the individuals that are in Alliance or in the space programs are in agreement to this artificial intelligence. And they try and convince them that it's not a good idea. But, so supposedly these huge spheres have been coming in, and they thought that they were their Sumerian gods coming back. And supposedly the Dracos have been quarantined, and they're not allowed to leave the planet. Before they were like, please just let us leave and we'll, turn in whatever individuals, they've been working with. But they wouldn't accept that, and so they're hoping, that this disclosure is also going to be about holding this Draco agenda accountable. But it's so questionable. It's like, what are these meetings? What type of disclosure? What is Corey getting from 1 minute to the next? It seems like he's not able to tell us everything. So, there's individuals called AI prophets that are working to bring this AI control. And basically it means that humans and even off-planet entities don't need to do anything. The technology will do it. The technology is programmed to... Because once we're linked into the artificial intelligence system through the nanoparticles and this and that, they can control us without needing to directly control us because it's already kind of a part of, the technology. The AI, they consider much more capable of ruling humanity, but it has been a scourge across multiple galaxies, and it has destroyed hundreds of advanced civilizations, far more advanced and wiser than our own. This is considered by other space programs and even other Federation ETs as an imminent threat. The security protocols in place to guard against the AI threat are quite intrusive at times and are taken very seriously. They have been hard to stop, these Dracos, because they have stayed one step ahead, because they have this artificial intelligence, and therefore it's easy for them to infiltrate and change minds within the Earth Alliance. I mean, the manipulation is like, you have to be so centered and so grounded and so in tune to not mistake AI signals with, they can even create sort of versions of yourself in the future that you're sort of answering to, so that you're not even listening to a legitimate inner voice. You're listening to something else. And so it's something, the more we educate ourselves about, the more we can protect ourselves from it. The purpose of AI cloned images is to disrupt the authentic spiritual communication connection and redirect it to the artificial intelligence reality and false timelines, where they attempt to take control over your consciousness. They can clone us and artificially generate our image too. They can capture our consciousness through religion and government and media and through New Age deceptions. It is designed to derail your spiritual progress. Most spiritually undeveloped people have a hard time discerning the false messaging of AI mind control and dark force manipulation, and so they easily fall into the traps. A strong and loving spiritual heart with a balanced, peaceful mind can deflect and destroy AI machinery. Many of us who are on missions are here to help us stay clear of these traps, and are also doing the energy work to overcome these assaults through holding a strong spiritual body. But it's not easy. I mean, I'm exhausted just with all the attacks. It's like trying to hold a strong spiritual body. So that's from the Ascension Glossary, which is awesome because the resources of what Lisa has is just completely in alignment with what I truly feel. So the Secret Space Alliance, there's a group that has broken free from the different space programs who are working on creating a major data dump. They want to do a total data dump and do a full disclosure and have tribunals to basically hold accountable the crime, those that are responsible for the crimes against humanity and anything that they're associated with. Okay, so the Draco are stuck here behind the barrier. They will remain here and are supposedly suffering from the energetic waves that are occurring, as well as being starved of loosh from the awakening population. They will be here for a future judgment along with the pawns they tried to give up for safe passage out of the solar system. Because remember, they were willing to trade in those that they've been working with to get out. The Dracos are like, we got to get out of here. It's like they expected us to be enslaved by now, and they're like, we don't want to be here anymore. And so even if there aren't these tribunals, those that they've enslaved and victimized will be their judges, because those that have been victimized and enslaved will be set free because we're helping them to break free. And the thing is, the more we expose this stuff, the more we bring out everything that's been secret, the more we're going to be able to do that. So alternative 4 is something I came up with. It's like, okay, we have alternative 3, which is colonization on Mars. What about alternative 4? Which is about connecting with the organic timeline and the divine birthright of our incredible human potential as a unified species and as individuals. We can work with the higher dimensional races of the cosmos. We need to understand our DNA and how it connects to the stargates on this earth. We need to embrace our dark and light and overcome the agendas that seek to conquer and divide all of us, particularly during this window period. So anything that's choosing one thing over the other isn't going to help us. We got to embrace the masculine and feminine. We got to embrace our light and dark. We got to embrace our technological mind and our spiritual mind. And when we integrate these polarities, we bring balance back. And again, this directly impacts the earth grids. It helps the stargates to open, and it helps us to move into higher earth energies because we're allowing an initiation. We're allowing our DNA strands to turn on. And the planetary bodies, like I said, Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune, and how our personal planets relate to those outer planets are what's assisting us in this. And so sometimes it seems so complicated, like, what do we do? What do we do? Well, it's already happening on a cosmic level. We each have our own agreements and patternings that come with our natal chart, but on a much larger cosmic level, this is already happening. So it's not like, we have to rack our brains and try and strategize this. There are natural cycles when the natural stargates open. We're in this window right now. And the vibrational change is taking place in this part of the universe is why the control of humans has tightened so rapidly. And this is our opportunity to do this work and awaken our blueprint. The ruling elite have devised chemtrails as a means of covertly microchipping us all in order to create antennas inside of us via nanotechnology, so to make us, totally controllable via a psycho-civilized, electronically mind-controlled society. Using HAARP microwave antennas, the National Security Agency can establish a seamless computer link direct to our brains, but first they're using chemtrails to get the nanoparticles into us, which are reassembling in our bodies to form the antennas. So maybe next conference we'll all have antennas coming out of our head, but you know what? I don't think any of this is working on people like us. There's immunity. Some of us are immune. You just can't be controlled, no matter how many assaults, no matter how, The thing is, that's why I call myself a global alchemist. If they're going to load us up with these heavy metals or, these nanoparticles, well, then we better be alchemists. We better learn how, to raise the frequency. And the thing is, when we allow these initiations and we can expand, and we're operating from higher earth energies, we have the capacity to transmute and alchemize anything. But if we stay stuck in this sort of lower density thinking, which comes from the media, which comes from the propaganda, which comes from the distortions of the masculine and feminine, and comes from all the fear that they're trying to throw us, then we stay in a low vibration. It's very easy for these assaults to actually have a detrimental impact. So if we're in a low vibration, chemtrails, toxins, all of that are going to impact us greater. But if we're raising our vibration, it's like, it's nothing. We are able to shift that energy, and we're able to neutralize that energy and release that energy. You know, it's amazing. It's like, yeah, we have the immune system, but we also have spirit, which is the higher octave of, you know, our immunity to all of this. And so as scary as it all sounds, it really isn't. I mean, I used to get really pissed off at chemtrails. I mean, I still am, because they just riddle the sky with it. But I look at it and I say, thank you for reminding me of how advanced we are, because this is why you're doing it. You're threatened by us and what we're capable of. And these chemtrails can't stop us. But what we believe, what we buy into, what we enable, what we allow ourselves to be infected with, that's where the problem is. You know, otherwise, as spiritual beings, as highly advanced multidimensional beings, we can handle anything. We came into this experience knowing that. And again, spirituality isn't going to come from a book. It just comes from your ability to expand, to go through initiations, to recognize that all unconscious energy, when you shine the light on unconscious energy, it becomes a part of yourself that you get in touch with, and that's our multidimensional spiritual body. You can be a person that's really gifted with psychic abilities, but misuse it, you know, and manipulate and use black magic. Or you can, you know, move into a place of that Christ consciousness, which helps the planet to ascend, even though it already is, because those higher earth energies already exist. It's in our DNA that's dormant to switch on in order to experience it. You know, it's just important that we don't buy into this crap, because we don't need to save Gaia. Gaia is multidimensional, but she is giving us this experience so we can see where we're going wrong. So if we see the skies being sprayed, if we see the waters being contaminated, we have to look at our own inner elements. You know, where are we in a heavy density in our emotional bodies? Where are we misusing the fire element? Where are we allowing our physical self to maybe degenerate, you know? And if we can look at those things and heal those things, the earth responds to us. And that's another part of how we're upgrading, is doing that inner work, because whatever we achieve on the inside changes our outer reality. I mean, think about it. When you get more empowered, when you love yourself more, people drop out of your life. It's easier to leave those bad relationships. It's easier to move into situations that are healthier for you. So, you know, the same laws apply on a larger level. So in 1926, the Zeta Zephyrim began interacting with certain factions of Earth governments. So this is from Keelantic Science. 1926, that's a heck of a long time ago if we were talking originally about the 1940s. Several projects by Zeta Draco were intent on destroying Earth's grid vibration rate to stop us from evolving or ascending. The Zeta were involved with Atlantis and for a time with colonization of Mars. So, I mean, that just shows how long this has been happening. There's much more history to share about these races, including a planet formerly called Apex and Lyra that became the Zeta Reticulum. Not all are harmful, but some have joined in with service to self beings, which are Dracos. You know, again, we can't think all reptilians are harmful or all greys are harmful or negative. You know, it's just like humans. It's a mixed bag. Not all are harmful, but some have joined in with service to self beings when they destroyed their own world due to nuclear war. They were turned into short greys after being forced to go underground. This destroyed their reproductive abilities, and so they used cloning to reproduce. And we're seeing a similar situation here. The Zetas and Reptilians supposedly were the beings involved with engineering the Nordics on Rigel, where they fled after being attacked by reptilians in Lyra. They became the Tall Whites. They are known to want to stop our ascension through misaligning the Earth grids, which misaligns our DNA, damages our DNA. But our consciousness can repair it, you know? We're like, how do we fix it? How do we fix it? We just have to find that frequency, an energetic signature that holds the truth. And then energy is, you know, what happens before physicality anyway. So the Nordics were able to flee this infiltration, and some of those groups are trying to help us. The Mother Arc is one with the 0 point, that's the 13th gate. It overrides all female principal archetypes of pain or victimization that exist within men and women. Mother Arc is the returning sound principle of the Godhead, bringing the female wisdom back to the planet by reclaiming her brain logos and reclaiming her offspring. The logos is the 7 chakras, so think about it. Going into the underworld and into all these different levels, you know, and gatekeepers, and going and clearing the 7 archonic rulers, and then bringing in the 7 pillars of wisdom. And that's where, you know, transformation of humanity happens. The Melchizedeks are the genetic hosting race of the Earth's ascension cycle for the last 35,000 years. As of 2009, 2012, our planet went beyond the Melchizedek universal field to prepare for the return of the 13th gate pillar of Mother Arc and the crystal star hosting. The return of the goddess, the override frequency. It's not about a particular person. It's about an energy that's within all of us and how that connects us to the planet and how that connects us to our ability to ascend. But it's going to be incredibly difficult to ascend with things like the Mars agenda not being exposed. Because the amount of tax dollars, the amount of energy that is taken from us, the amount of work that people do in their daily lives that end up supporting something that they don't even know about is theft, absolute theft. And the thing is, it's empowering to get the knowledge. Even though people at first feel very threatened by it because it shatters their foundation, ultimately it's the same sort of reaction we'd have, with a friend that's betraying us. At first you don't want to believe it, you don't want to see it, but then it serves you to just be able to face it and end that contract, end that agreement. So now we're in that override frequency. We have Aurora and the Sphere Alliance, who are all connected to the Guardians, perhaps with different names. And then the Oraphim, who have manifested into the physical, carrying codes to help activate humanity. And again, the human race was seeded this way, but some, definitely have the ability to be the activators. So what it comes down to is there's 12 dimensions within a 15-dimensional wave spectrum, which is what our chakras connect to. The Oraphim race can direct this energy and activate it, and many have incarnated here as activators, even though everybody's got the same potential. So when we looked at the harmonic universes in our DNA, it's basically, if we want to look at it on a more personal level, our personality is 1, 2, and 3, our soul is 4, 5, and 6, our oversoul monad is 7, 8, and 9, our avatar Christos is 10, 11, 12, and our founder consciousness, which is energy and not form, is 13, 14, 15. And again, take what resonates. So each of the dragon lines are woven into primarily 12 main sections comprising the world grid. Over the last year, more dragon lines were created to reflect the changing zodiac patterns interacting with the Earth. This interfaces directly with our DNA. To have the 13th sign come in means the 13th gate is being activated, and it is truly the return of the Mother Force. And the Sphere Alliances are connected to this, I believe. So when we're talking about exposing the Mars agenda, to purify the negative ego or to bust the negative ego in its tracks is to open space for the heart energy to come in, and the balancing of the masculine and feminine, and the integration of Venus and Mars. So when we're looking at Mars, well, let's look at Venus. Remember that book, Venus, Women Are From Venus, Men Are From Mars? Well, we carry the masculine and feminine within us. Our right hand is electrical masculine, our left hand is magnetic feminine. So to deny one within ourselves would be denying our own internal balance. So I look at the exposure of the Mars agenda, and the understanding of the Venus transits is that opportunity to heal on a massive scale, on a human, for the whole of humanity. As we clear false and inorganic architecture from suppressing and impairing our consciousness, we are extracting the alien enslavement programming, alien implants and mind control in order to embody our true inner Christos spirit and return to the zero-point field, the heart of the God gateway leading back into the 7 higher universes. And so Andromeda and Orion actually connect in chakras 8 and 9, and that's the monadic integration of the oversoul. And so when this ascension window period is bringing us back, some of those races that went extinct, like the Aquafarians, those are returning too. So, we won't go too much into this, but the 5 platonic solids all connect to earth, air, fire, water. Like I said, the 5th one, which represents the ether, is the dodecahedron. And the negative alien agenda and many of the Illuminati lines have misused these, and they appear as dodecahedron shapes. They are a part of the reversal matrix used by service to self-entities. When we activate the alchemy, we heal our DNA, and the 5th element is integrated, and the reversals are corrected. This comes about through sacred union, which heals the grids as the activation's coming in right now. But we got to get the lower chakra thing, down. And so when we think of 3D Earth, we're thinking of 3 chakras, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So the Mars agenda is that bridge. The exposure of the Mars agenda and the exposure of all that secrecy gives us that chance to start to really move into the other ones. And for the most part, humans occupy the 4th chakra and the 5th and the rest. But the 4th chakra is very vulnerable to astral entities, because if you think about empaths, or you think about what happens on the astral, and you think about just the energy of love, if it's not coming from a higher level or a galactic sort of universal love vibration, it's very easy to have entities sort of feed on. I mean, haven't you noticed that in this world, being nice isn't always the best thing? You get taken advantage of, or you take it all on, or you absorb too much. So it's really about downloading this higher heart energy into the fourth chakra, which actually changes the color of it to a lotus blue. The inverted pentagram or five-pointed star, so prevalent in Satanism, is also symbolic of this unbroken time cycle, the vibrational prison. The fifth element connects to alchemy in our throat chakra. So through the individual and planetary spiritual ascension process of root race evolution cycles, the integration and healing of all 12 levels of coding through its genetic components potentially unite. And when these forces of polarity are integrated and synthesized, the embodiment of the original 12-strand DNA of the diamond sun body is available to the planet and humanity. And I got this from just researching a lot of the chelantic science and energetic synthesis material, and just a deep understanding through a lot of just studying of whistleblowers. But anyway, the 12-tree grid, it should have 12 spheres, not 10. So when you look at like the draconian 10-sphere model, and you look at how they relate to, you know, the Mars agenda, you know, it really does come down to just a misuse of power. So it's our feminine power that needs to be grounded into the earth body right now. And that is what's going to correct all these reversals. And this is where we have the power to choose what timeline we're on. So again, you have to bust the agenda, you have to create exposure, you have to bring out everything that's been secret, because that's where it holds power over us. And once we have the full picture, it's easier to be, you know, more grounded in this experience, because we know what we're dealing with. Because I think deep down, on an unconscious level, people know something's going on. They can't quite put their finger on it. They don't necessarily want to face it. They probably don't know how to accept some of this other information, but this ultimately sets us free, because we're connected to everything. And, you know, the exposure of the Mars agenda is the healing of humanity's solar plexus and how we've been trapped and locked in this so-called 3D world. So this is the path of Venus, which draws a perfect pentagram in the sky. That astrologers and astronomers have noted the orbit draws a perfect pentagram. And so it also forms a sacred geometry of a rose. And I do believe I have, maybe not some other pictures, but there's some unbelievable pictures if you Google of what Venus has done in the sky. You know those things when you were a kid with the pencils and the, yeah. I mean, that's basically what it's been doing. Yeah. So the inversion of the pentagram, where the four elements have been locked into these lower vibrations, where the fire element has been more about anger or repression of anger, and you know, earth and its extinctions and degradation of the environment, the water element being, you know, really heavy density, and the air element being riddled with like chemtrails and mind control. You know, Venus as a planetary body has been helping to offset all of this. And it's through our ego center, it's through our willingness to align that this purification of the elements, you know, takes place. And so it can't really happen without exposing the dark agendas. So our internal balance of the masculine and feminine, which brings us into creating from our own divine instructions and not allowing any negative force to run your being, will allow us to unify and experience this shift in the most positive way. It ripples out and assists all of humanity and the planet. As Mother Earth provides for us, we give back through being our true nature, because we are the alchemists and we are the shift. Thank you, everybody. If I have time, you know, I can take a few questions. But yeah, so I mean, just to kind of wrap it up, you know, what it all really comes down to is, you know, when I recognize this recruitment and I recognize the dates and I recognize that it's a time that we as a humanity get to write the rest of the script, you know, my biggest goal is just to encourage us to be sovereign and empowered and to determine, you know, what it is we want to manifest through the consistency of holding intention. We're very powerful and very psychic. We can heal everything through psychic intention. We keep thinking it has to come through technology. We have to remember we're the most advanced technology. We're the free energy they're looking for. We're what they're wanting to feed on in order to be able to generate their artificial timelines into this reality. And the thing is, it's not about fighting the system. It's not us against them. It's us recognizing where we're allowing it, enabling it, and giving our power away. And the minute we bring it back and we starve them, then we recognize that it was us all along and that we were just healing our negative ego this whole time. And the exposure of the Mars agenda is very metaphorical to what this humanity is needing to go through right now to really start to move into this this blossoming of human consciousness, which is representative of higher earth energies. So thank you so much.